weary man of 34 with flowing locks steps into a ruined city, sure it's infernal. He clutches his blade, haunted by thoughts of how things could have unraveled so terribly. He wonders if mastering the sword sooner might have saved his sister from a grim imperial fate. Sooner might have saved his sister Param. In that case, he would not have grown into the wretched creature he now feels he is. Exhausted by existence, he imagines a better world in which he'd met his revered master. Black-haired girl observes him while he drifts through memories of his master and their irreplaceable bond. With a sigh, he wishes he'd valued his master more, exhaustion etched on his sword and eyes, until someone with their own blade approaches, rousing his instincts. A fearful child lifts a trembling weapon at him, painting a pitiful, fragile scene. He remarks that children are not what he sought, nor is this hostile greeting deserved. Though the child insists and accuses him of murder, his regret fades and mockery spills, spurring the boy to brand him monster anew. Yet though the word monster stings, he finds it familiar, almost woven into his identity. At that moment, he is far more aware of the aching and wretched pain overtaking his body. The ache becomes piercing, every nerve urges surrender, feeling his thoughts threaten to dissolve. Yet with eyes on the yellow-haired child, he promises endurance and quietly asks, a monster, adding that he alone ended the masters, ravaged the Tulken Empire and toppled royalty. He questions if the boy even comprehends the lives he's ended, silencing the youth. With a twisted pride, he claims to have erased hundreds of thousands, so of course he's a monster. His troubling confession shakes the boy, whose hands now quiver all the more, grip unsteady. The boy's trembling reminds him of himself long before, so he quietly asks what the child is named. But on hearing Jack Stewart, the fighter's worn face transforms entirely in an instant. He says it's odd since his name is also Jack and, laughing, admits no memory of any Stewart. With a wavering tone, the boy insists that, for all his flaws, his father was an irreplaceable presence. The man pauses for a hint of envy, but instead of apology, he decides to offer a strange chance, puzzling the youth. Directing the blade back, he urges the boy to strike him, the bizarre situation leaving him dizzy with confusion. But the man presses on, promising the boy glory and revenge if he dares to slay the monster now. Though hurt, he knew escape was possible, yet chose instead to provoke the boy, who, trembling, finally raised the sword. But instead, the boy collapsed to his knees before the creature. Seeing tears roll down the boy's cheeks, the man was amazed by his refusal to kill. He stroked the youth's hair, praising him, believing peace couldn't come otherwise. He told him a true hero carries countless lives and living without regret matters. Unlike the man, the young blonde still had the entire future ahead. As before, the child broke down in sobs, while the older man's resolve gently faded away. He asked the child to tell all that both the demon and war were finished, prompting the small one to wonder, old man, but why? Why live so humbly with such power? Grasping his sword, he tried to answer but collapsed, words unsaid. This was the curtain call. Sensations in his fingertips drifted away like air from a balloon. Darkness, and against his breath, he felt his eyelids close. And for a brief instant, and against his breath will. All sound faded, and in his departing moment, one persistent thought swallowed him. If everything began anew, could he rewrite this sorrowful last chapter? Instant at that point, it was as though he father and recalled his drifted mother's death just after inside his some birth vividly strange dream. Instant, it was as though he father and recalled his drifted mother's death just after inside his some birth. Memories of his stunning sister, famous across the land, and his teasing half-brother returned. He remembered it all, abandoning Jack Valente, becoming a swordsman and journeying through the lands. Lost in memory's flood, he wondered, was this a dream or truly his end being replayed before him? The fragile young boy was teetering at the edge of a breakdown, sweet but chilled. Recollections of the Second Continental War rushed forward, now a victor and harsh sovereign, famed as the fiercest beast of all. Fueled by revenge, he crushed Tulken's realm and ruled the West, erasing the Tulken bloodline forever. When at last he triumphed, a fleeting sense of fulfillment colored his heart. Embracing the end with open arms, he accepted death, feeling life had nothing left to offer. And so his heart fell silent at last. Yet if so, what was unfolding? The young boy was himself. Jack, was this the past retold? Desperate, you wonder how that was possible, pinching himself to be sure it wasn't just an illusion. He was in the Valente Marco's house, a renowned family in the Teslan kingdom, and belonged to the loyal group that supported the king. There he was the youngest among the siblings, the youngest member of the family that held the Marcus title in the kingdom. If he hadn't been greedy for the Harris title, he could have lived a much more comfortable life. But his house was an exception. Strolling through the rose garden, the boy contemplated the place he knew so well. It could be called an annex as it was located in the corner of the property. Even though it was beautiful on the outside, it was all an illusion. The place was known as exile. Its only purpose was to completely exclude the youngest son from the outside world, leaving him without any servants or family members to support him. That was the true rose garden. Jack was startled when someone called out to him, saying they brought him something to drink. It was Ron the butler, and also the only person in that place who took care of the boy. Softly, he remarked that the Ron he knew was a clever one. As he took the glass, the little one asked if there wasn't any poison mixed with the juice, which made the servant very nervous, but he quickly explained it was just a joke and thanked him for the care. It made Ron laugh, asking him not to overdo it, then leaving the boy alone afterward. There were 11 people in that garden, not accounting the protagonist. One of them was the butler, but the other 10 were just guards constantly watching him. Besides the caretaker, he didn't think anyone else needed to be kept under watch, which gave him plenty of free time. The boy was sure that everything was real, but had no idea he would return to the past, and it had only been an hour since he found out he had gone back. It's not like he had a plan in mind or anything like that. Now he was 14 years old. And even so, he didn't have any calluses on his hands and didn't seem to have a mana heart or anything like it. If compared to other children from noble families, he was very inadequate, but there was a good reason for that. He didn't have mana yet at that time. While thinking, a man prepared to hit him from behind on the head. Suddenly, the boy felt unwell, confused about what was happening. He had let his guard down. That's when he remembered it had been many years since he got smacked on the head. The man commented that he shouldn't distract a dog while it's eating. Observing the broken juice cup on the floor, his voice makes Jack tremble. The dark-haired man complained that he hadn't even greeted his older brother upon arrival. This was Phelan Valente, his elder brother by 3 years and his family's second son, the same one who hindered the MC from mastering mana. Because of oppression and intimidation from that scoundrel, his abilities were severely stifled. Filled with enmity, the boy fixed his gaze on him. Even after many years, the image of his brother lingered relentlessly in his memory. He remembered sadly the moment Phelan splashed a hot drink upon his head. His brother called him worthless and implied he had no right to exist. He warned that learning anything, a sword or spells, would be considered treason and warrant swift destruction. While mocking him, he claimed Jack would eat and wear only what he was given and hinted perhaps things would improve if he strictly obeyed. Phelan said he might accept him as his sibling only after becoming a marquis. When Jack was young, he was notably fragile, a truth he always recognized. Everyone at home viewed him as lesser, hence his secret title as the shame of the house. Were such whispers ever exposed, it would truly disgrace the last son of Amaro's line. Bitter laughter, echoing even from servants, would ring throughout the halls. All treated him with contempt, led on by both the family's second son and Count Mantes. It was absurd how Phelan acted, since their firstborn, a woman, was Jack's only protector and the family's one loyal soul. Despite being older than Phelan, she could never become heir simply because she was female. She was the lovely eldest whose path was chosen for her, barred from inheritance. For her, a forced union awaited. She would dwell endlessly in another's manor to perpetuate their name. These were the circumstances when Jack returned, and this schemer schemed eagerly to exploit her. Phelan wanted nothing to do with the family weakling, nor let their sister be seen in low company at court. He deserved punishment, yet Jack's attention snapped back when Phelan remarked about his eyes. Ready to strike, Phelan asked how he dared look at him like that, but the boy gripped his wrist, stopping him cold, which unsettled Phelan and startled the nearby guards, since this had never occurred before. Still unwavering, Jack had resolved not to suffer such disgrace ever again. Phelan, astounded that such vermin defied him, soon met the ground from our boy's quick counterattack. From the floor, Phelan demanded to know what Jack thought he was doing. With sarcasm, Jack offered to help him up, implying he was weak. Drawing his blade, the man radiated mana and hurled cruel insults at the child. The guards thought about intervening, but causing more problems for the second young master was something the boy knew was likely anyway. He found the whole scene incredibly absurd, as if it were a cruel farce. Before Phelan could act, Ron jumped between them, urging restraint and reminding Phelan not to wield mana like that. Ignoring all protest, he struck the servant in the face just to push him away. He acted like nothing around him had any significance to him at all. Reflecting, Jack recalled Rom's many secrets, then fiercely threatened, "I'll deal with you and your servant, arrogant child." The MC remained steady and shot back that his brother was all talk, asking if he planned a verbal fight. Once the sword was raised, Jack's gaze dripped with hatred, sensing he'd face real danger. Yet even unchecked by training or magic, he doubted that he would lose the duel. Surging forward, he stressed his third circle strength in attack, though that was his limit. Even with a fine sword, Phelan seemed nothing more than a pampered child still. His poor technique gave Jack little faith he'd manage to land any significant blow. Debating, the protagonist grinned coldly and told Phelan he required a lesson to strengthen his will, which rattled him. Phelan stammered, his retort dissolving into fragmented, harsh words. To empower the body with mana rightly meant fortifying the mind along with it. Acting on that, Jack pressed his hand into his brother's dishonorable face, feeling no guilt. He believed that paying him back utterly for the disgrace was only just. Phelan's balance faded further every time Jack struck. Alas, Phelan collapsed, defeated and humiliated. Recognizing this as where he belonged, Jack checked if his brother still breathed as he lay unmoving. The crowd watched Jack's actions in tense astonishment, finally grasping his latent power. Seeing a guard ready his spear, Jack deliberately ordered them to stand down at once. He warned that obedience was the only way to avoid his brother's fate. That was more than enough to make everyone withdraw and busy themselves elsewhere. With the matter settled, he turned his focus back on the fool clutching his hair on the ground. The youth hauled him along long and suggested losing weight, as dragging him was a real effort. At the same time, Phelan let out painful groans. At the fountain's edge, the protagonist remarked on the heat, asking the older one if he'd like help cooling off. Swiftly, he forced the wretch's head underwater, leaving him powerless and stunned. During Phelan's torment, Jack thought of all he'd suffered. After his sister married for their family, Phelan poisoned their father, seized power, and committed misdeeds. As a result, nothing improved, and the whole Marcus family disappeared as if erased. Despite everything, the main character didn't crave revenge, but rage burned at his sister's sacrifice being in vain. He was intelligent and refined in every way. He couldn't begin to guess what emotions filled her as she arrived at the Empire. She left on her own, basking in family glory, likely aware of what her journey would mean. For the man who claimed her was the infamous fourth Imperial Prince, known for his depravity. Even at the altar, he coldly told her she was not the true wife. He made her submit, follow his rules, and wear a smile. Since she loved her family, she endured it all with patient obedience. Had Phelan or their father learned how she fared, perhaps life would have changed course. Jack did not want to dwell on these thoughts to avoid succumbing to his anger. Phelan cried out through the water, pleading for mercy in a desperation that resembled an insect. Yet Jack had grown numb to these scenes after so long embodying a monster. It was the same terrified look worn by those who met the shadow of death. He urged him to consider his every misdeed an insult given to the boy. Yet he likely remembered nothing, so it was only fair he experience it for himself to recall. Through direct experience he might learn the value of kin. These words chilled Phelan to the bone. With silence, the youth raised his fist for answers, until at last the man confessed and begged for relief. The boy only paused when a third-party Ram called out from the gazebo, beseeching him to stop. The boy quietly muttered his displeasure in response to the unusual request. He forcefully slammed his brother's head into the fountain's edge, then flung him down. Then fly him, he commanded that his brother, unwanted and fallen, be removed, unconcerned for his final fate. Whether finished or not, he only wished for his brother's prompt removal from that place. The nighttime air seemed to rush to the young master's side, anxious about what had happened. As Jack moved by Ron, the butler's disbelieving eyes followed, shocked by his actions. Stories about what he'd done spread swiftly, unsettling the mansion completely. Phelan was carried inside by two servants, startling a purple-haired lady who fainted at the ghastly scene. The Marcus family's proud heir now lay bedridden, with a wounded head and sudden terror of water. Amidst these circumstances, a sense of disorder was only natural within their world. Despite the turmoil all around him, Jack slipped quietly back to his private room. Jack ate cake calm as ever, while Ron's wary eyes watched and servants whispered about the new power strong enough to beat his brother, famed for reaching the third circle at just 17. The main character, knowing neither martial nor magical basics, could have been hiding power, but why expose it now? Phelan would soon be named after coming of age, hinting the younger may have longed for that role. Even his sister, usually calm, became anxious from the heightened unrest everywhere. Once the news reached their lord, he summoned the third son, who kept savoring the butler's delicious cake until a maid reported news that truly surprised him. The servant relayed the lord's command to the boy. He was summoned to appear in the main hall. The boy rose, insisting he no longer needed the butler's guidance, being grown enough now. Carefully following orders, the blonde's devoted servant only asked that everyone remain vigilant. The palace's vast corridors made each step feel like he was under constant close scrutiny. It felt strange to find himself overlooked once again after so many years of attention. Though indifferent to others' views, he silently hoped this ordeal would soon finish. As he drew near the entrance, guards stepped in, barring his passage without a word. It was as though they pretended he did not exist at all before them. While thinking it nonsensical, he tried courteously to address the guards but was ignored. With a sweeping foot, he challenged the pair's senses while all watched, barely hiding it. Had he been his old self, Jack would have walked away after seeing the knight's look of contempt. He would not choose to walk away this time. His resolve was clear. Grinning, he warned them to stop their foolish looks or he'd have to teach them a lesson. That certainly triggered a wary reaction, the guard questioning if he'd truly heard right. Next, the boy knocked the guard down with a kick, stating he'd been summoned and demanding entrance. The guard stammered that he couldn't say, revealing to Jack he'd been left waiting for nothing. Perhaps they sought a spectacle Jack deemed unworthy until allowed in after regretting it. Yet the boy faced away from the servant, paying him no attention. When questioned about his destination, he retorted, leaving the guard lost for words. Jack told him to tell the lord that if he wanted anything, he should go to his quarters instead. Only now did anger spark. One servant entered the lord's office to explain Jack had gone. Hearing this, the lord's half-smile deepened. The youngest had transformed indeed. Meanwhile, in the rose garden, the boy snacked, sure that company was on the way. Something along the distant skyline seized his gaze. And there came the lord, trailed as always by a cluster of attendants and kin alike. Stubbornness was written boldly upon the man's expression. Jack laughed. The man was unchanged, a memory from a life not easily forgotten. He saw his father as a ghost, recalling how he had sacrificed Jack for power as before. The man, blinded by his craving for unreachable strength, couldn't discern his own limits. He greeted the elder he could never call father, though the man asked why he'd acted so. The boy only replied with a question of his own in return. He asked what was meant. The purple-haired lady raged, demanding respect for the lord. Jack proposed they talk indoors if they wished, or remain in the garden should they prefer. Torrent of mana erupted from the old man, testing for a hidden mana heart in the boy. Realizing he was wrong, the man noted the boy's talent and asked why it had been kept secret. Though the truth was, I traveled to the past, Jack simply replied that he didn't want to share it. The young woman insulted him again, labeling him insolent and a commoner, but fell silent when the lord wished to say the boy was not as useless as he had once thought. Annoyed, Jack wonders if not having talent would mean he wasn't the lord's true son. Asked if he wants the Marquis to acknowledge him, Jack decides he doesn't care for such things right now. The elder turns away, says he understands, then departs without another word. Jack watches the group depart and is left alone. He's lost as to why his father met him only to leave, seemingly without any anger at all. Remembering his stepmother, he cruelly suggests she care for herself since her son's incident gave her wrinkles. Her fury blazes at his words, the bitterness so sharp she almost snaps her fan. Jack smirks, for her suffering delights him since she'd helped him with nothing, and after bowing he remarks sarcastically they should send his regards to her son. Not without irony, the butler later announces Jack Valente has been sentenced to 20 days of solitary for making a scene. Suddenly, Ron asks what happened, but the MC tells him to be quiet and let him focus on his activities. He muses that if Phelan had won, Ron would be indifferent. Pausing from drawing, he finds solitary curious. Exiled already to the Rose Garden, Jack can't picture solitary being much different. It's simply a room, and the butler reminds him that with less than a month before classes, he's once again in trouble. Jack freezes in surprise, realizing he had stopped thinking about studies after such a different life. At 14, he's due for the Imperial Academy like all Teslan aristocrats are mandated. If you're able-bodied, it's mandatory to attend in person every day. The Imperial Academy starts at 14 and lasts 4 years. Jack had finished his first semester and was on break. Returning to school life once more felt unexpectedly odd to him. His mentors connected to the academy allowed him to skip every class except for hers. So Jack wouldn't bother arguing with his father about anything frivolous anymore. Thinking sensibly, studying was his only course as he still had 27 vacation days left. With 20 days in confinement and 6 for travel to the academy, he'd go to school right after prison. Although it was his decision, he struggled to unravel his feelings as Ron, weary, asked if he'd finished painting. Jack rose, touched his easel and inquired about his prison, growing annoyed by the servant's silence and repeating himself. The blonde servant then said the condemned only had one fate: the Marcus Estate's prison for criminals. Jack reeled in disbelief. He stammered, confirming, "So I'm to be thrown into a cell?" Indeed, the answer was yes, yet somehow this wasn't unexpected for him. Still, anger escaped him in a desperate groan. He couldn't believe that elder's cruelty. The school break wasn't rest but just another hardship, as the academy made clear. Valente proved that truth. Once he went to functions, mingled with nobles, and even met their vassals, experiences Jack never shared. Sure, the Marcus business bored him, yet family words only brought him simmering frustration. He felt out of place here, as if nowhere welcomed him. Now his home had become a grim, confining cell. All thanks to that obstinate elder, Jack headed to prison by himself to preserve a shred of dignity. Ron could only watch Jack with a look that was hard not to pity. Crying quietly with a handkerchief, Ron watched Jack like a forgotten pet as Jack urged them to hurry. Despite everything, he stood apart from ordinary prisoners. His cell came with a bed, a rudimentary bathroom, and regular if uninspired meals. But comfort vanishes when trapped in a freezing cage with a musty shroud and meals so bad even bugs flee. He folded his arms with resignation. Endless hours to dwell are too much weight for someone his age. Nobles ruling land punished people with their own laws, not the imperial code. Within their borders, they were rulers themselves. Marcus ordered Jack jailed, but he remained his son, a noble. Jack wasn't a traitor, but the Lord put his child in chains regardless. He pondered how his father might hush this scandal, likely blaming Jack with some forbidden method, though that seemed extreme. No doubt Marcus had already spun a convincing tale to excuse Fleen's current state. Perhaps Jack Valente, the family's black sheep, craved forbidden magic and brought ruin. Next, his brother Fleen tried guiding Jack back, but the stubborn youth defied every plea. Taking a darker turn, Jack used his dangerous spells on Fleen to keep him silent. Even while suffering, the heir found the grace to pardon his foolish younger sibling. Such a tale likely replayed now in the minds of both Marcus and the Marquesa. The disgusting prospect of this scenario was enough to make one's skin crawl. For the MC, spending a few days there was was bearable, but wasting his vacation in that dull prison was unacceptable. Though he felt little attachment to his house, escape wasn't yet an option, and for good reasons. His sister Ron, his revered master, and now, weakened as a 14-year-old in a frail body, these things bound him. Wise as he was, he knew that in their world, only the strong survive, while the weak quickly perish. Jack wouldn't repeat the violence of his past, but retribution for past wrongs still mattered. To achieve this, he'd need wrongs, time, and still power, both offered at the academy, time for growth, strength for vengeance. With these, Jack could defend those he cherished, Ron, his sister, and his steadfast master, but first he had to reclaim what was his. Organized into 10, even though he disliked this, mana gradually started to swirl and take shape in his hands. Mana users were organized into 10 rankings. Circles 1 to 3 defined the beginners among mana users. Circles 4 to 6 were specialists, 7 to 9 were high users, with the elusive 10th as true masters or superhuman. Pressing both palms over his heart, Jack brought forth a bluish, magical glow. It was fortunate that no eyes were present to witness his magical efforts in secret. It took only 2 hours before he shaped the first circle, a feat dripping with the vigor of youth, since in his former life he'd only begun learning mana at 17, perhaps, he mused, due to youth's infamous impatience. He admired his upraised hand but quickly banished the energy, wary of anyone finding out. A peculiar sound echoed like Marquest's footsteps, but lighter, making the boy feign sleep, though soon realizing it was not as heavy as usual. The approaching voice belonged to someone he vaguely remembered from long ago, shocking him awake. On the opposite side of the bars stood his tearful sister, Elizabeth Valente, waiting for him. She stretched her hands through the bars, worry filling her, and asked if the child was hurt. Tears fell as he saw his dear sister, still lovely and gentle, visit him even there. When she called him Jackie, his heart soared as he pressed her hand and assured her he was well. Concern visible, Elizabeth wondered why he dared magic, since she'd gladly have taught him herself. He squeezed her hand, apologized, but she quickly changed the subject to the MC's early return. Her brother's silence troubled her, so she asked gently if he truly heard her, and he only wiped his tears, smiled, and claimed he was happy inside. Elizabeth couldn't comprehend his reaction. How could joy live in that chill and squalor? Yet Jack admitted happiness because this reunion was real. Elizabeth suspected madness in his words, but he grew solemn and voiced what he longed to share. "Shall we escape?" he asked, and the suggestion left his sister completely startled. He persisted, dreaming about fleeing to a woodland to start fresh and build a tranquil farm. She responded sternly, though Jack was sure he understood how Phelan and the Marioness treated her. He believed it was best to forget the past, find peace, and perhaps someone who cherished her truly. He spoke of that farm and the Lord's faults, but Elizabeth interrupted, calling out loudly. She pleaded, "Do not insult our father, he's always our Lord," her voice strained by emotion. She felt they were born from father's real love, and despite Jack's dislike, she wanted to repair things, asking for patience. Jack only said it truly filled him with joy to see her, and that brought color to her cheeks. He rose and asked her to give him space from the bars, and though puzzled, she moved back. As Elizabeth stepped away, Jack gathered mana, leaving her shocked as she questioned his secrets. Jack broke the lock effortlessly, then stepped out just to embrace his sister, holding her close. Tears blurring his vision, he apologized earnestly for all he had done. Placing her hands on his shoulders, Elizabeth looked at him in deep concern. Such unusual actions made her wonder if her little brother was really feeling all right. Wearing a gentle grin, the boy assured her that he truly was all right. As they held each other, he promised that now she needn't sacrifice herself, for he would make life different for them both. But the noble could not shake the thought that he was soon to meet the fourth prince. That same prince had once claimed his sister in their past life. At that moment she was unaware of the looming fate ahead. That wretch molded Jack into a beast, and memories of forced torment tormented his mind anew. Scenes flashed of him binding the monarch, securing him firmly to the chamber of pain. His fury seared his face. He felt he'd never forgive the Tulken Empire for his sister's suffering. Jack remembered fleeing his home at 17 in that former life. A decade moved on, leaving much change behind him. Haslan vanished, his home was ruined, Tulken ruled the land, and Valentine lingered briefly. Reminders of his sister, still clinging to life, surfaced in his thoughts. She once pleaded for her family's mercy as the fourth Imperial Prince's unofficial wife. Not truly his wife, she was brushed aside by the fool who scolded her for her requests. Still, Elizabeth remained compassionate, kneeling for days until he finally showed mercy. Supposedly, this was how the tale was passed from border to border across the land. Yet the reality behind this act of mercy was far more terrible. Grateful yet lost, Elizabeth repeated thanks, never knowing the right words to say to him. The prince trapped her against cold stone, threatening ruin if she manipulated his kindness. He admitted leaving her house untouched only because the right moment hadn't come. She endured, dancing to his every wish, the prince's puppet on fragile string. He fashioned her into a plaything for his whims, subjecting her like a mere household hand. Envy gnawed at the true wives until he was bored and locked her away, leaving her at their mercy. Mary and Valent's home fell then. Jack returned at last to ashes and upon learning the truth grew monstrous. He swore vengeance on Tulken, vowing to bring ruin even to those only connected in passing. First the Empress and Princess fell, as did loyal houses, each erased by his wrath. He left not a soul, relentless, determined to erase every last trace from the world. Back in the present, Jack studies Elizabeth behind bars, vowing to prevent past mistakes. Yet she knew nothing of this, instead fretting over her brother, urging him to stay safe as she talked with their father. He nodded firmly, promising her his protection and deciding that he'd do all it took this time. After she left, her mind was uneasy. Her little brother had become someone very different. Normally cautious and reclusive, now he showed a boldness she'd never witnessed before. For the first time, she saw a new chance rooted in his potent and mysterious magic talent. Despite her sixth circle skills unable to find dark magic, her father's seventh circle insight made it alarming he hadn't detected his son's gift. Elizabeth walked into her father's chambers and asked that Jack be freed, arguing he never studied banned spells. She believed those forbidden arts were mere fables, so she doubted a clueless boy could ever use them. She reasoned Jack's captivity was a front to conceal secrets, reminding the lord her brother had no desire for the title, angering him. The girl accused him of not only punishing her sibling but giving her a warning too. Her clever accusation startled him, as he never thought his daughter would see through his intentions. The girl understood the fate awaiting those like her, used just to simplify life for the Marquises. It really served as a caution. If she disobeyed, Jack would suffer as proof of consequences for boldness. Her father declared Jack was not their kin, saying he'd fake Jack's death and hide him with a false name at maturity. Elizabeth became stiff, once heartened by her father's gentleness, yet he justified his decision. He reminded her to embrace her role in the meantime, expecting her to follow it forever as she glared at his harsh enforcer. The lord marveled at how a magicless child surpassed his third circle son, which unsettled her further. She now questioned what no circle meant in this context. She recalled the earlier encounter in the jail, yet her father dismissed the subject, agreeing to release Jack per her wishes. After receiving permission and expressing gratitude, she shut the door and fell apart outside. Jack had once asked her to flee with him, though her heart knew such escape would never happen. Grief overwhelmed her muscles, and she sank helplessly to the floor to sob without restraint. Sun rays crept over Jack's features in the morning after dreams filled his night with old memories. Perhaps sleeping in the new room caused such vivid echoes to stir within him that night. But he hardly has time to dwell before a guard opens his cell door and announces his release. Jack rises with wry humor, remarking that he was actually growing fond of his new quarters. The guard presents his clothes and the boy expresses thanks for the gesture. Yet when denied his shoes, a servant excuses it, saying none remained for him to wear. This attitude tries Jack's patience, provoking him to shout and accuse the guard of joking about friendship. Hesitant, the servant tries to appease him, yet by then Jack's fist brims with concentrated mana. The child strikes without hesitation, anger shaping a harsh lesson for his servant. Afterward, dressed for the palace, he is greeted in the garden by Ron, always upbeat and running to him. Eyes lit with true concern, Ron inspects for wounds, noticing ink stains, and the boy assures him it's not his blood. Jack's eyes move to see extra guards, and the butler explains soldiers and a squire were now posted with the Marquises. Among them, the iron-blood squire shines in his armor but carries a somber look. Jack calls him poor guy, remarking it's sad such promise is wasted babysitting nobility. This had never been the dream that lured him into knighthood. Seeing the intense stare, the MC surmises the blonde knight already knows of his recent imprisonment. The knight bows and asks politely if the young master would mind sharing what had transpired in the prison. Jack's jaw falls open in disbelief. He hadn't expected such courtesy. The blonde squire says he'd only read that Jack had attacked a guard brutally. Ron, upset, insists Jack couldn't do such a thing, but the squire persists, saying he must know all since Jack attacked a colleague. Jack cuts in with a dry chuckle and a curse, noticeably offending the squire. Right, he repeats as if the word wounds him while his eyes survey the scene to guess the knight's aptitude. He suspects the knight likely ranks within the fourth circle. He sneers, saying he thought a mantis keeper would know its standing. The blonde replies Jack is too severe, but Jack asks what's hard in naming someone a dog and gets a scolding from Ron. With growing irritation, Jack explains that all the squire must do is stay close and watch him. He could clean or wait as long as wished, but shouldn't lecture Jack about rights at all. If he still wanted to be a knight, Jack advised him to keep his role and hope not to cause trouble. The knight bows his head, quietly seeking the boy's pardon with humble remorse. The boy grins at the gesture, glad with his loyal dog who now obeys his commands. Content, he faces away and dismisses them, ordering the squire to share his findings once all is resolved. He states that complaints go to the Marquis and from now on his new moniker will be Chick, requiring him to come when summoned by Jack. At last he heads back inside the palace with Ron, leaving Chick alone in silence. Hearing his stomach's protest, the protagonist lets the butler know he craves some meat if possible. The servant quickly promises to grant his wish at once, showing eager dedication. A feast made just for the boy satisfies the MC's hunger, drawing compliments for Ron's cooking. Observing Ron's unease, Jack urges him to speak freely and stop giving him that look. Although Ron wavers, the boy offers him meat, innocently inviting the blonde man to join his meal. Unable to accept, Ron wonders at dining with his young master, but Jack insists they sit together since they have matters to discuss. Ron finally sits with him, and without delay, the MC directly questions his sister's health. In reply, the servant calmly says, "Elizabeth hasn't changed at all." The boy's eyes gleam with innocence, yet his words are cutting as he reminds Ron of his sister's pain, causing Ron to shake. Trying to persist with his story of innocence, Ron is interrupted by the boy's sudden halt. Repeating his praise for the food, he reminisces about eating safely in childhood because the butler always checked for poison. This revelation surprises the butler, but the MC still has not revealed everything he knows. Another justification is Ron actually belonged to the men's circle of mages. Once more, Ron is rattled by the depths of the protagonist's surprising insight. The boy goes on, "Since you knew my mother, but I never did because she passed when I was born." Yet with others often noting similarities between Elizabeth and his mother, Jack deduces she was wonderful. The boy trusts this deeply and says Ron shielded his mother, who was guarded by a men's circle mage. If this story was in a book, the boy would have discarded it for its lack of realism. Yet reality was cruel. He recalls fleeing home with the butler, pursued by agents of his own father. That evening's thick rain made an already tense escape even more harrowing. Those who chased us were likely Iron Blood Knights, like the young woman before. The Marquis himself had ordered them to end his own son's life. Back then, the captain wielded the power of a ninth circle swordsman while Ron gave his life, unleashing tremendous mana to shield the protagonist from the pursuer. Jack remembers that, at that moment, he became fearful of the ninth circle mage who once journeyed with his mother. He sensed the woman was never a simple commoner, something unknown to the Marquis or even the butler. Given all this, the boy decides he'll continue living in ignorance since who the servant was now mattered most. After this discussion, Ron is asked his purpose and the boy admits he only trusts him and his sister, wishing for Elizabeth's protection. Strangely, his wishes for someone who reached the 6th circle at 18, easily able to protect herself. Jack insists, however, calling her selfless and too willing to shoulder burdens for others. Such a sacrificial life was suitable for the Marquis, not for her. Jack would leave for the academy at dawn, not to return unless needed. He'd spent 4 years there and needed Ron to accompany his sister while away. Afterward, Ron could follow his own path. Confused, Ron asks what was meant by his life. Jack explains he referred not to living in his shadow but to finding his true purpose in life. Yet Ron is puzzled, curious about why the boy would spend exactly 4 years at the school. The reply is that only after those years would Jack be fit to protect Elizabeth, but before he can say who threatens her, they are interrupted by someone entering. Even at this critical moment, he couldn't dismiss the newcomer, as it was the young knight with a report. The wounded guard had been stabilized with first aid and was being treated. Upon hearing that, Jack feigns concern while the blonde knight fusses, recounting how he cut his fingers in training, then dropped his dagger which struck his eye. The main character praises his work, teasingly asking if the mark sought a reward, but the knight declines. Nicknaming him Chick, Jack is corrected as the knight reveals his name, though Jack brushes it off and requests a reel and a wooden sword for fencing practice. But the squire with pride refuses, insisting he isn't mere an errand boy. Jack repeats the nickname Chick and asks if he's disliked, then jokes that it's a perfect time for a beating. His claim makes Ron leap up as James questions his seriousness, to which Jack confidently confirms. He even exposes his youthful, untried hands, promising the knight free rein to attack in a duel since he's never wielded a sword. Just to clarify, James asks if the boy wants fencing lessons from him. Jack laughs, saying it's hilarious and orders the swords to be fetched. As James departs, the butler wonders if the boy can handle a 4th circle opponent in battle. This doesn't faze the hero, whose self-assurance outweighs his fear, prompting him to suggest a wager. Ron thoughtfully says they should bet on how many blows Jack will receive and asks what they'll stake, which the younger welcomes. Though Jack is sure of himself, Ron warns him once more about the squire's superior abilities, confirming the boy's intent. Doubting his prowess, the young man insists Ron wins if Jack receives just 1 blow from the challenger. Taken aback by this, Ron learns the loser must grant any wish the winner desires, intensifying the tension. A trace of sadness passes over the butler as he tells the boy there's no need for a bet to grant his wishes. He remains a servant, yet this only sharpens Jack's delight in playfully outwitting his loyal companion. Jack fixes his gaze on the man, assuring him earnestly that only his sister and Ron truly have his trust. Ron merely chides, reminding Jack it's impolite to point utensils as he gives his quiet advice. Yet Ron's eyes reveal sincere amusement, delighting in the exchange though outwardly complaining, prompting Jack's comment. With clear innocence, Jack explains that he asks trusted friends for favors, never commands, wishing the same from Ron. Softly, Ron admits granting the boy's wishes is hard to resist, enchanted by the heartfelt request. James suddenly kneels in apology for his disrespect and pleads with Jack for reconsideration, interrupting their talk. Though many people scorned Jack even in company, direct humiliation deeply differed from mere words, making James wary of confrontation. This fear drove him to kneel and beg, which Jack notes by proposing they move somewhere private, baffling James. Jack, sounding haughty, teases that the squire fears losing to him, causing James a visible hint of denial. Still, Jack persists, "So you're certain you'll defeat me that easily, aren't you?" He questions while watching Ron's deeply interested look, which reveals all without a word. Assured of the squire's confidence, Jack asks Ron if there's a secret training spot, leaving him startled. Unable to deceive Jack, Ron quietly divulges the existence of an ideal place to practice unseen. He describes a secluded basement tucked away at the rear of the sprawling estate. Upon arrival, Jack sees an array of weapons and equipment and learns Ron's mother founded the space for her sons, not for Ron's training. Jack questions his ignorance of the room, but Ron claims it's due to his lack of training himself, which satisfies Jack. Everything gleams spotless, unmistakably tended by Ron, whose work is praised with Jack's grateful smile as both feel pleased. At last he looks at the chick, who shivers as he's summoned and offers up the wooden sword. Though the blonde one wavered, the boy continued to push him relentlessly. He carefully passes the sword over, his voice wavering as he does. His eyes shift to the squire, who observes that the hero looks practiced with a sword. The remark makes a sly smile spread across his face. If every life he once destroyed were piled up, it would form a ladder to the sky. He thanks him for the remark, urging the knight to approach, even with simple wooden blades. They face off, Jack Kent and his challenger, who easily parries and evades. Getting cocky but with careful moves, the MC touches the knight's throat with his wooden sword. Caught off guard by the swift defeat, Ron yells for the young master, who remains deeply focused, cautioning the chick that a real blade would mean death. He had not committed to a true contest, which was clear to everyone present. The blonde doesn't respond, too shocked as he wonders if the boy truly held a sword for the first time. Even Ron was unnerved. Moments before, the knight had easily swatted the young master aside. That blow, though light, should have floored a 14-year-old, or so Ron had anticipated. Instead, the kid moved flawlessly with ideal strikes and evasions. Had steel replaced wood, James would have had no hope of survival. He was uncertain about Jack's sudden transformation. He'd only handled a sword in fencing. Was Jack perhaps a born sword prodigy? No, not even natural talent could explain skill at such a level. As he pondered, the teen checked that the squire was in his early 20s. Upon hearing he was 23, the MC asked when training with Mana began. It was at 18, and hearing that, he grinned madly, faking delight about the blonde reaching the 4th circle. That level of achievement was rare for someone who began his studies so late. Scanning his mana, he saw the squire might attain the 8th circle, securing an esteemed guard post. Saying nothing more, the boy let go of the wooden blade, and as James objected, he picked a real sword, amused by such talent guarding children. Now he remarks he was beginning to appreciate the man, while warning Jack of the danger he refused to acknowledge. This amuses Jack until his demeanor turns unnervingly serious as he reveals there's a crucial difference between arrogance and confidence, challenging if he really thought it was blind luck. The blonde is stunned, though inside anger churns fiercely. "You're no more than a fledgling," he states. Jack declares, "This time you come to me," inviting another duel as his rival can barely contain his rage. He launches his attack without a moment's delay. This reckless response unmasks his weakness. For a second time, Jack prevails, smiling. He reminds the man it's now his second defeat. Fuming, James demands an answer, but Jack feigns ignorance, casually claiming he redirected his blade mid-clash. Presses for the knight clarity, brags it's advanced, even taunting if he wishes a repeat. Shaken but determined, presses for the knight clarity, grabs a real sword, brags it's advanced, readying for another contest. Meanwhile, Jack verifies his victory with Ron, who promptly asks what is required of him for losing the bet. Jack sets the same task: protect Elizabeth, stressing that his trust had to be proven true. Startled but resolved, the servant promises to risk all for her, telling the knight this round would be his, as Jack and his foe both gather mana for the next fight. Insisting fiercely, the blonde demands his opponent muster his utmost strength. At their first exchange, James is immediately overpowered. Jack's mana hits him deep, agony knocking the knight to his knees. Standing above, Jack places his foot on the fallen knight's chest, savoring his shock. Drained but curious, James asks how someone of the 1st circle holds such strength. His confusion is justified. How had someone so low-ranked managed to best him, though the reason is clear? Rather than spread mana evenly for overall strength, Jack channels it all to a single point. Without answering, the knight seeks to true serve as knighthood, sighed, leaving his opponent confused as he thought he already achieved it. Asking for clarification, the knight hears Jack make a startling offer. side. Though offended, James listens as Jack stresses that loyal servitude would offer greater rewards than being a formal knight. Hesitant and tempted, the knight inquires what he truly stands to gain by accepting this role. Jack is let down, mumbling that the knight hadn't even bothered asking for the details of his duties. Despite the sour attitude, the MC assures the blonde he can wield power and influence if he desires. His responsibility was clear: remove every obstacle for his master and inflict harm on enemies. The boy's icy words shock James and Ron, with the knight instantly asking about his potential targets. Jack states the answer is clear, subtly pointing to Phelan, who still lay in bed recovering. He grants him a day to mull it over. Later, Ron suggests trusting James is risky, warning it could reach the Marionist, but he disagrees. The boy laughs off the concern until Ron sternly warns that the Marionist is simply waiting for her chance. If she learned Jack planned to depart for the academy, she'd surely intervene or even try to harm him. Still, the MC is unfazed, knowing she might wish him harm but won't act, since Jack's brother fears water keeping her busy. Can he observe her plots and the Lord's influence on Elizabeth? Such tension means she can't strike. Ron keeps questioning if the boy feels certain about all this, showing lingering uncertainty. Jack responds, asking if Ron really thinks the Marquis would stand by and allow that woman's scheme. He isn't allowed anywhere but the academy, so harming him would likely stop at a broken limb. Besides, Amir Marchioness lacks the talent. Greater beings before her have failed at such things. It's almost amusing to see how disconnected from reality such plans appeared. With the topic settled, Jack thanks Ron for his service and the weary servant just murmurs, "You're welcome." The young master draws Ron in, saying he'll decide his moment to go, raising concern about him slipping away. He chuckles and hints at doing just that, though Ron takes it very seriously. Jack instructs him to follow secretly tomorrow if he wishes to know, which leaves Ron unexpectedly speechless. Ron hoped to accompany Jack openly, but instead promises his presence won't be noticed at all. Before exiting, Jack shares he'll establish the second circle in his private quarters to avoid interruption. Ron, puzzled, asks about the second circle, believing it to be a feat reserved for the talented. Yet for this young protagonist, such magic was honestly trivial to perform. Though not convinced, Ron agrees to comply with these peculiar instructions. Roaming the castle, James couldn't shake memories of fighting the clever youth. Anyone with such gifts must surely have mastered the third circle's power. Perhaps he's brilliant, but thinking of making him a mere watchdog was completely preposterous. He lacked his brother's Paragon supporters, and no loyal allies stood by him either. The third young master possessed nothing, and recalling his promises of a grand life brought no comfort. James acknowledges he was far too easily convinced by empty talk from an inexperienced child. He realizes he ought to confess everything to the Martionist, from Jack's potential to all their talks. Amidst the house staff, the blonde maid grins, believing this might be her chance with the Marquises. Even a gifted brat would never challenge House Marco's might unless he was a true prodigy. Upstairs, Elizabeth learns her mother, one of common birth, has granted her a rare opportunity. The Marionist remarks that inherent gifts are hardly anything special or impressive on their own, because, as Nas's daughter, her only charm lies in her beauty while everything else is forgettable. Elizabeth falls silent, deeply stung by the woman's unkind remarks toward her. Handing her some wine, the woman compliments her sweetness and urges acceptance without hesitation. Elizabeth quickly declines, saying that she dare not drink with the Marionist present. With a shrug, the woman finishes her wine and muses. Both Duke Malone and Assenble's son seem drawn to her, then hastily pauses and reconsiders. She insists the middle son would make a most unsuitable match for Elizabeth. The Maruvness promises a finer proposal and instructs her to behave and take great care meanwhile. Without warning, the woman probes if Elizabeth fancies anyone, prompting the girl's hasty denial. Pleased, the lady says anyone Elizabeth favored would simply vanish without warning. Abruptly, the lady changes topics to her curious little brother, whom she suspects harbors unique plans. Jack's mention alarms Elizabeth, who knows of her brother's plot with James but not of the eldest son's long-term support. Unnerved, Elizabeth shrivels as the woman laughs wildly, picturing someone so feeble attempting to harm her. His plan seems so outrageously stupid, the Marionist suddenly lets out a chilling laugh. The girl's face falls, aware her parents shaped Jack's ambitions, though she suppresses her response to avoid worsening his standing. After laughing herself breathless, the woman reassures Elizabeth that she'll keep looking for suitable matches. Nevertheless, there remains something she wished to mention, out of a sense of maternal concern. She encircles the girl's neck with her arms in a silent but threatening manner. If you secretly pursue someone, you know exactly how that's going to end, she warns. Fearful, the girl trembles and can only mumble a quiet confirmation that she understands. The older woman smirks at her submissiveness, offers praise, and reminds her dinner preparations await. Elizabeth, despondent, quietly agrees with her second mother as the dusk brings maids bustling for dinner. Soon, the entire Valent family gathers around the table, ready to indulge in their dinner. Yet a sudden entrance throws open the dining room door, startling everyone within. Uninvited, Jack strolls in and boldly wonders aloud why they all look so mournful. Everyone's eyes dart to him, his sister in shock, the rest, especially his father, in clear contempt. Feigning innocence, Jack claims he surely deserves a seat as the distinguished third young master. Earlier he was immersed in practicing mana manipulation. Of the two kinds, one enhanced the body. In short, it sharpened intellect, senses, and above all, granted greater physical strength. The alternate method formed spells using set formulas for fireballs, ice arrows, or even hellfire. Ron was a men's circle mage, while James, a fourth circle swordsman. Mana dictated if one cast spells or wielded swords. Though Jack fought with a sword, he was not barred from using magic, practicing mana on his bed. The butler gaped at his skills, then told him it had taken 2 months to master the second circle. A remarkable feat, since usually advancing from first to second circle took months. Unless gifted like Jack, such growth was arduous. He cheerfully praised Ron as extraordinary. Ron laughed, admitting praise was odd from one who conquered the second circle so rapidly himself. Noting the time, Jack inquired, and the servant replied it was already 5:48 in the afternoon. Shocked by the passing hours, Jack swiftly got to his feet. He considered grilling steak as usual, dismissed it, since his family was likely filling up in style. Instead, deciding to feast with them as nobility would, which Ron quietly mocked as madness. Jack fibbed, insisting he only wished to announce he'd be departing the following day. In his room, Jack tore into a chicken leg, savoring the main house's delicious fare. The rascal even remarked the dish pleased him, yet it never matched Ron's culinary skills. The backhanded comment stirred up the relatives' anger. After feasting, he thanked them, but his father pressed if he was there for a reason, which Jack confirmed since he had no other motive to visit that cheerless home. Jack's brazen tone led the lord to suspect madness, yet he still goaded his father, asking what amused him. Amid tension, Elizabeth asked Jack to speak privately and promised to grant his wishes, but Marcus retorted before she could act. When silence filled the room, Jack was urged to speak, so he declared his intent to leave for the academy the next morning, unable to bear the somber atmosphere. The Marquis reluctantly praised the choice, but Jack insisted it was not a request for approval. To smooth things over, Jack said he appreciated his father's acceptance. With the news out, Jack mustered the nerve to mention his brother, who flinched when spoken to. Sipping wine, he remarked he'd heard Phelan's water fears left him so parched he'd hate to drink even now. Though he once taunted his brother for fun, Jack still viewed Phelan as family and slyly poured wine onto the table, urging him to drink since it wasn't water. Phelan recoiled from the act, nearly tumbling from his seat, while Marianus erupted, screaming at Jack's boldness and questioning his audacity. Jack, unfazed, left, saying he'd said his piece, finding her scolding little more than noise. He strode from the chamber in heavy silence, knowing his words would reverberate in the mansion long after. Seething, Marianus promised the rest she wouldn't tolerate that lack of respect. Unbothered, the boy taunted that he would be ready. Even outside the door, the lady's shrill fury rang sharply, vowing she'd see the child punished. In the hall, the maids whispered, eager to make sense of the unusual confrontation they'd observed. While they worked cleaning the spilled wine, nothing else happened that night except Elizabeth's gentle reprimands. On the morning of his departure, Jack wondered why the arrangements for leaving were so unadorned and basic. Despite the magnificent exterior, only a comfortable seat waited for him and nothing more. The small caravan was led by a six-circle knight, Rizison, who eyed Jack intently as though planning something. Along with him, James was also included in their escort to the academy. Concerned, Elizabeth asked if he wished for a companion on his journey, but he reassured her he did not. Her anxiety lingered, suspecting their second mother was scheming behind the scenes, though she firmly insisted on joining him on his way. Stubborn as ever, the boy reassured her, predicting changes ahead and declaring he was all right. Besides, he understood that their family could never break her spirit now. Silent and somber, the girl followed on horseback, prompting him to ask when she'd stop trailing him. Finally, she relented and told him to be cautious, with Ron watching her departure suspiciously. The butler appeared anxious, inquiring if he truly wanted to go since the house felt oppressive. He mirrored Elizabeth's worry, and Jack reminded him of last night's promise he should fulfill this evening. The servant could never allow such a promise to slip his mind. Throughout the journey, Rayson eyed the young man's behavior with constant suspicion. Ron was told to watch over Jack's sister and was dismissed so she would not be alone. Obeying, Ron wished the boy well on his travels. The servant would follow at the rear, intending to wait and see what might occur that day. Jack wanted to offer a token to the faithful butler for his devoted hard work. The ride's soothing ambience made him drowsy, leading him to nap while on the road. Rosam noticed him sleeping and glanced his way coldly, as if hiding a secret motive. Their journey stretched till dark, with the boy sleeping until the night sky woke him. Jack stood up to question why he'd not been roused from slumber earlier. When he saw servants preparing the area, he guessed they'd camp in that very place. James drew near, alarming the boy, but tension eased when the young one flashed a smile. Shortly, the man commented ahead that his small friend had told everything to the Marianus. Now under guard, there was nothing else he could manage since capture was already complete. Raisin revealed there'd be little banter, but the boy asked him to try, he'd actively listen. The silver-haired man man happily shared they'd camp each night on their 4-day journey. Jack perceived nothing odd until the man threatened him grimly, describing grim nightly torments, but you'll mend after a potion. Unfazed, the boy listened on, as Raisin clarified that Marionis had issued another command. By now, everyone had seen the boy form a mana circle with their own eyes. The woman ordered its destruction, which provoked a sly smile from the troublesome man. That certainly drew his interest. Breaking a mana circle meant near doom, repair was rare, and regaining mana was nearly impossible. Even worse, the trauma could leave you unable to walk for the rest of your days. The man claimed James had told him everything. Jack's skills with mana and sword are rare, but your talent alone won't change fate. He then told him not to fight back, warning resistance would only bring more misery. The boy recognized this tense mood, as if he'd returned to his roots and watched the fearful onlookers. Though he lived in peace, his sword's ghost lingered, old wounds inscribed in his soul. He called the butler and recounted his 10 years of captivity atop the mountain, which bewildered the guards. Still, he explained that's where he had met the mentor who taught him all that he now knew. But everything shifted when he descended. His kin and kingdom had already slipped away. He honestly didn't care for his house's fate, but his grave words made the guards question their meaning. He offered no answers but bared his sword, sharing there was something weighing on his mind. He mourned his sister Elizabeth, hoping her gifts would secure her happiness even when family failed. At the palace, the girl assured herself under the sky that her brother was still safe. Had his sister found joy in love, all the other griefs would have been forgiven. The men mocked, saying fright made him unstable, yet true defiance was useless there. Moving closer, the boy declared that revenge's sweetness is as maddening as his own sword talent was pointless, as agreed. He convinced himself he could survive Razan's torture. Then, channeling every drop of mana, he boasted what talent and force combined could do. With rage, Jack promised to prove it now. Like a hurricane, his mana circle burst outward. The captain sneered, doubting what good could come of such a feeble little circle. Realized if he didn't act quickly, spell doom for every guard powerful alive. Jack unleashed a sweeping, storming wave of mana, powerful enough to lay waste to a city against them. Only then did James start to regret making his earlier decisions. Anyone would prefer the second son over the so-called failure of the Valente Manhwa family. Yet in that instant, as if time froze, the blonde sensed his end while the boy broke his sword after the fierce battle. Now he gazed at his defeated foes sprawled powerlessly upon the earth. With a call for Ron, the loyal servant emerged from the bushes and questioned the scene he saw. The pair stood in silent awe, viewing the chaos wrought by the boy's hand. Jack described the attack as one of the first sword arts among 8 he'd refined transcendentally, even if he didn't comprehend it all. Nervously guessed the feat was even if he didn't mana comprehend it all infused art, not swordplay, but the boy feigned surprise and asked for a healing potion instead. Suddenly, Rom was jolted to see the boy coughing up bright streams of strawberry juice. Despite spewing almost endlessly, the boy dismissed it as nothing, repeating his request for a potion. The butler hurriedly fetched a flask from his coat, which the boy promptly consumed in one motion. While doing so, he was chided by the servant, who warned he'd have died if the potion wasn't available. Amidst it all, Jack smiled and remarked that he trusted Ron's readiness, certain he wouldn't hesitate to save him, informed by past events. His certainty stemmed from a similar ordeal he'd lived through previously, white-knuckled and grateful. Lying white helpless as knuckled, and Ron cared for him and grateful realized he'd been too occupied to express anything important to the butler. Gazing warmly at his guardian, he managed a sincere, "Thank you," regretting his past self's reluctance to speak from the heart. Moved by Jack's admission, Ron deduced that foreknowledge truly was the cornerstone of the third son's power. Jack explained he was reliving time itself, something his friend knew well, and then rose from the earth. The boy was stunned. He felt stronger than before, realizing the potion was exceptionally potent. After standing, he reclaimed his sword and coat, then confirmed one last time that the little chick was destroyed. Planting a foot on his enemy, the MC admitted he'd love to turn the blonde into a handy messenger. Ron noted it seemed a prudent choice, but Jack disagreed, insisting he'd expected little from the start. Jack revisited time regression, wondering aloud if the butler felt no curiosity at all but struggled to concoct a question himself. Giving examples about his sister and the Marcos family's fate, the butler showed he'd predicted their likely outcome. Simply by observing the young man's expression, he realized the ordeal hadn't ended softly. Jack claimed he could divulge further, but would do so only if Ron showed genuine intrigue. He taunted him by asking his thoughts out of curiosity, but the servant admitted that wasn't the reason. The boy, irritated, told the man to stop being boring. When questioned about his future, Ron doubted but thought he'd somehow make it. The servant hesitantly said he doubted he'd die so soon, but was shocked to learn this was how the boy died. That revelation definitely surprised the man and piqued his curiosity even more. However, Jack urged him not to lose his spirits over something like that. Ending their talk, he stepped into the carriage, declaring he wanted to rest a while. Stretching out on the bench to rest, the boy tried to calm his nerves as Ron neared a guard. Seeing that someone still breathed, he raised his hand to end his consciousness completely. He wondered whether a weapon that could defeat 25 mighty knights could rightly be called a sword. Every man's heart was pierced, but not like a traditional blade stabbed them, so he was puzzled by the damage. The servant surveyed the fallen and considered the young man's past, uncertain if things would work out in the end. Later, Jack awoke abruptly, flustered and sweating, with Ron calling his name nearby. Ron kindly checked to see if Jack was alright. Recognizing Ron, Jack admitted through his pain that he felt unwell even after the potion, and the butler listened. He handed Jack a bag, reporting that he'd recovered 5 quality potions, 63 gold and 40 common coins from the night. Surprised, Jack joked about the cash laid in Manty's dogs, and seeing him close the bag, explained using a potion now would be pointless, giving Ron 3 more as repayment. Ron happily accepted, feeling his one valuable potion had multiplied into 3 thanks to Jack's generosity. Ron then asked about the dead, but Jack planned to just leave them. The blonde still warned that might bring suspicion if Jack alone survived. He was startled and pressed for details, guessing it meant the Marbus, yet Jack knew his father wouldn't dare touch him even if he suspected him. Meanwhile, Ron argued him being summoned for questioning would be expected of any good lord. With a smile, Jack suggested making a bet, but Ron refused, confident he'd only lose again. After all, he knew his master was far too wise. Looking at Jack, the blonde knelt and said, despite it all, he still trusted Jack had something guiding him inside. Jack confirmed that nobody else was aware of the man's presence there, which was correct. To reassure him, the mage revealed he had left a magical illusion at the palace that was probably still arranging things. The illusion was a 9th circle spell, a sort of clone safe from those sleeping magicians. Shifting gears, the MC noted that Marcus would be curious about today and told Ron if it went wrong to claim Jack was behind it. If the Marcus threatened him, he was to issue a carefully chosen warning. If my sister or I perish, it marks the fall of the Marco house. Both grew quiet, simply absorbing the situation for a few short moments. Ron confessed his nerves, but the boy laughed and assured him it was only a what-if, not to worry. He simply wished that Marcos might choose for once to treat Elizabeth gently and kindly. Soon after, the man asked about entering the academy, and the boy agreed, being asked more about his father's thoughts. Still, the academy had solid rules. Jack calmly told them none could return unhindered once the semester began unless by loss of Steph or the house head. So the butler had to go. Despite wishing to join in the boy's journey, it was not the moment to do so. Thinking this over, the boy urged him to look out for the monsters abroad when journeying home. Afterward, the blonde youth inquired if 4 years would truly pass until they met again, something Jack couldn't confirm. Nevertheless, Jack insisted Ron must watch over his sister, keeping his promise. Now that Ron was gone, he had to form a different plan. Knowing they'd camp 3 times from the marquee to the academy and travel for 8 days in total, the journey was set. Yet as he observed, he found the supposed trail was truly little different than a regular road. Claiming it as a sign of nearby villagers, the hero seized his case and aimed to mount a horse. Being small made getting on the horse a trial, costing him precious minutes to finally succeed. The ongoing trek was silent, the night so still you'd never suspect that fierce battles had just ended. Jack had no intention of riding straight to the academy. Nav's utmost devotion was to her master, Valentine Milos, whom she credited for her entire being and growth. Though time faded memories, she once mastered forbidden spells and inspired fear in any who knew her name. As he rode, his heart pounding with excitement, Arbelo's city welcomed him with a tempting inn. Pondering whether to stay, he took in his first sights of the Baron's territory. Before the inn, 3 youngsters talked with innocent delight. Looking at their cheerful faces, the place felt full of warmth and good fortune. Entering the inn, the boy noticed all sorts sharing a meal, accompanied by a sweet dog. He gently stroked the puppy and took his seat, hoping he wouldn't be hassled by anyone inside. Just after sitting, someone greeted him and remarked they'd never seen such a young guest alone. A warm-hearted girl asked if he wanted food or a room, but her garb showed she wasn't employed there. Truthfully, her appearance suggested she was likely a mercenary by profession. The boy gave her 3 coins, ordered a simple meal, drink, room, and asked her to take his sword upstairs. She took only 1 coin, assuring him it was enough, and added she'd bring apple pie and some meat for his growing body. Smiling, she offered milk or beer, and Jack shyly chose milk instead. She turned to leave, telling him to play with Arnold the dog while he waited. It seemed a good place to stay, and the woman was honest, perhaps because war hadn't come yet. The friendly dog listened as Jack mused about the unknown future, until their friends' lively talk about recent events caught his ear. They discussed plans to wipe out demonic beasts using scores of mana users for this vast campaign. One couldn't see the need for such trouble, arguing not even Tulken Empire should stoop so low. The boy listened intently as a blonde voiced his doubts, declaring Marcus a formidable force. The Iron Blood Knights had set out to the Demon Forest for yet another risky mission. The King of Teslin gathered soldiers from noble houses and sent them with mercenaries toward the forest to subjugate it. That vast forest, resting at the foot of the Grand Canyon, stood as a boundary of neutrality. Though ordinary at first glance, it sheltered orcs, elves, goblins, and the mythical dragon-bound Imuji serpent. They forged gear and arms from troll blood, monster remains and sinew to increase their strength. Harpies' feathers adorned jewelry with elves taken as pets by nobles. The push to conquer was simple human desire. All the while, the boy understood well that the grand subjugation would fail utterly. The Iron Blood Order lost one in 3 nights, and the other nobles' troops fared just as terribly. Such disaster weakened royal power, birthed unrest among nobility, and finally unleashed civil strife. A man exclaimed that the real danger was the king's recklessness drawing too many eyes. But his companions quieted him, warning against speaking out in public for their own safety. He must have been out of his mind to dare say something like that here. At nearby tables, men stared, struggling to decide if he was merely intoxicated. Jack realized the man truly feared nothing, which was rare, and snapped to attention when his name arose. They called him Marquis Third Son. Rumors said Jack used forbidden magic, which some doubted, believing he was useless. He glared. They had no clue who he truly was beneath the rumors they spread. The blonde even questioned how someone so inept could have learned magic no living mage could teach. When the woman laughed, she mocked that he must have stumbled into the situation. The girl who shared the meal returned, curious about the joke that sparked such laughter. Her words puzzled Jack until he realized an unbidden smile had crossed his face listening. Sitting by the boy, she playfully asked for the secret, saying amusement was in short supply. He brushed it off, insisting it was nothing, just that the third master was supposedly foolish. Admitting he overheard, he said people judge on gossip alone, and she agreed, calling it typical. He wondered aloud about her own judgment, to which she replied she trusted her eyes more than talk. He said rumors sometimes held truth, and while she didn't respond, Jack eagerly bit into some pie. Didn't compare to the Butler's, yet the flavor nonetheless delighted him. The woman chose to drop the issue, saying that was just her personal opinion. But judging by the rumors, she doubted the Marquis Third heir would be as bad as tales said. That caught Jack off guard. She inquired about his reaction while he studied her scar and strong, well-muscled stature. He guessed she managed a nearby adventurer branch, startling her, and she looked briefly embarrassed. He wasn't making a random accusation without evidence to support the guess. Every city bustled with mercenaries looking for work or new opportunities. Mercenaries took on roles as soldiers, treasure seekers, or monster hunters as needed. Local guilds assigned such work, and those offices were often near familiar inns. So Jack guessed the woman had time, unsure how one managed a branch and inn together. The blonde admitted Arbelo was quiet, and she worked to earn what she could when jobs were sparse. The inn turned out to be a guild lodging, and though he was known as the village's fool, the bold woman recognized him even though he wasn't anywhere near famous. Yet in this lonely outpost, the woman identified him so easily until suddenly they realized why. A branch manager would hardly know such a minor noble for no reason. When the village finally appeared, the boy admitted to his companion that he had expected to find civilization. Still, the entrance was barred by 2 guards who questioned his purpose for coming and whether he was traveling alone. Jack calmly revealed his family crest, which impressed the guards, who apologized for not recognizing the Marco's seal sooner and welcomed him inside. At the bar, he guessed the girl must have overheard and warned her it was risky to approach a noble without the lord's approval. This amused her, suggesting he truly cared about her safety in this strange land. He replied with a wry grin, "At least for the moment you're kind to me," and she introduced herself as Jane Heir, offering her hand with gratitude. When their hands met, Jane's last name deeply piqued the boy's interest. Her surname matched the territories, and Jane explained with a nod that she was the 3rd daughter of the lord ruling this land. She worked as a mercenary, though she was a noble, unusual for her rank, but she was truly formidable. He wondered aloud if noblewomen were usually married by her age, but she explained how she loved her current line of work. Moreover, Jane's family refused to wed her off, which contrasted with his own family's customs so deeply it made him jealous. He simply remarked that her household must be truly remarkable. Jane called the puppy up as she asked what brought the young Marrow's master alone here with no guard, and he jested that an idiot like him required no escort. Jane was caught entirely off guard by his unapologetic answer. Turns out Jack was unexpectedly funny, confirming her guess that he differed from the talk. Still, Jack confessed he hoped to recruit a few skilled people for his journey soon. He requested up to 5 campers with culinary talent, promising 2 gold up front and 3 after arrival. Jane's eyes lit up as she realized how exceptionally generous Jack was. He was right. Transaction usually 1 merchant escort earned 30 coins each, and the money system was straightforward. Gold coin was worth 100 silver, putting values in perspective for the transaction. Jane promised to gather the team by morning and asked whether food and rooms were included. Handing her 3 gold coins, Jack asked her to set up lodging, meals, and if possible, horses with a carriage. He was definitely admirable in his generosity, and Jane assured him she'd enlist only real veterans before giving him the key so he could rest easy. With such a cheerful woman running the branch, surely nothing grim could occur in that town. Entering his room, Jack dropped onto the bed, worn out and unable to keep his eyes open. Thoughts of taking a bath flickered by, but slumber took him before he could. Abruptly, the boy found himself chained in a cave, called a poor child by a stranger. Weeping, he listened as the voice questioned his will to remain weak. Silent sobs ran endlessly down his cheeks. While kindness is no crime, the woman said incompetence was, then asked if he wished to change. In a quivering tone, the boy answered yes. The green-haired woman warmly gripped his hand, congratulated him, embraced him, and promised to be his master from that day on. Jack woke up drenched in sweat. It had only been a nightmare reliving memories with his master. Sunlight now streamed in, showing it was already morning outside. He barely had time to reflect before Jane arrived, greeting him loudly and scolded her for not knocking. Arnold was with her and bounded onto him, giving eager licks. Carrying his case down, the boy yawned. Jane remarked that he must have slept exceptionally well last night, which is why she had arranged the finest transport for his trip. She then introduced an escort group, ensuring all its members were seasoned veterans. Ironically, among them were the men who'd spread rumors about him, now openly uncomfortable. The mercenary group's captain introduced himself to Jack as John Doe. Jack found the captain's alias rather confusing. With a gentle smile, John Doe explained the name belonged to unknown corpses around those lands. Though he obviously used an alias, Jack let it pass, shook his hand, and learned they'd camp twice on the journey to Rocky Mountain. It would be long. The friends, once cooks and seasoned campers, didn't interest Jack as much as his need for relaxation. So the young master gave him the case and urged the group ahead, still weary. Finally, the guards departed the place together. Before leaving, the protagonist told Jane the mercenary was quite a character, and she ensured he really was experienced. Such would be the story if he were ordinary. Ron of the Ninth Circle kept secrets for his own ends. Yet Joe Nobai, a mercenary of the Eighth Circle, concealed only his strength, offering no real reason. The woman smiles, teasing about seeking a veteran. The youth predicts their reunion and she promises a beer. With a wink at Jane, he jokes she should pay for last time before stepping outside the establishment. From within, she wishes him a safe road, already having grown attached to the clever young master. Traveling, the boy found solace on the cart, humble yet comfortable enough for his journey. With clear skies and spirits high, he played with Mana, noticing Joe Nobody's curious stare toward him. Rising, he caught the blonde's eye and asked if he recognized who the small figure truly was. Haltingly, the man shared he'd heard only that the lad was a noble's son. Jack, feigning ignorance, prods him, and here's the branch manager assumed the boy journeyed the world. Saying he was curious about Jane, Jack is urged to ask freely, then offers a pocket watch with his crest. Inspecting the item, the man wonders aloud if it bore the crest of the famed noble house. Despite his uncertainty, Jack picked up on the hint that the man had only partial understanding. He tells how the crest is from Valente, Marcus's foolish house, doomed to fall and recognized by its symbol. His declaration casts a heavy silence upon the assembled men. Reflecting, Jack mused there really was someone deemed the fool within that old house. With a light grin, he wonders if the blonde man knows of an infamous idiot who was once arrested. His guarded conversation deeply startled a man, though he expected someone might guess after his clear hints. Jack mentions rumors spreading after prison, something about forbidden magic usage pays on his mind. Reading Joe's discomfort, he invites the laugh from yesterday but receives only a contrite "I'm sorry." Not entirely wrong though. Indeed, the MC had knowledge of forbidden magic, as his master excelled in that realm, putting even Swordsman in the know. Yet Jack insists he'd little need for such things, as long as his fists served him well. When Jack addresses Joe Nobody, he jumps, while Jack jokes over old gossip and is met with nervous confessions and excuses about ignorance from the group's leader. Most likely, the branch manager secretly informed him of Jack's identity, withholding it from the other mercenaries. Either way, Jack urges the men to let bygones rest since they'll be companions a while. Joe agrees nervously. Yet anxious energy refused to fade entirely from the company. That evening they gathered near the fire, musing that rumors were simply unproven tales. Jack found himself astonished, while the blonde remarked that Jack was unlike nobles who spurned labor. At the time, the boy was even washing dishes, setting him distinctly apart from the rest. Such remarks were unexpected. The meal was amazing and the main character satisfied, yet missed Ron with a heavy heart. Jack said washing dishes was fair trade for a fine dinner, and he possessed gourmet sensibilities. Curiously, the man inquired about their method for night watch, and was told they drew lots for turns. He teased Jack about joining, leaving Jack grumpy, saying a young boy needs rest more than duty, so best to not insist. Feeling uninterested, they agreed to tell tales, and the MC mused on what stories they might begin with. Choosing a subject, the MC promptly asked how many dragons lived in that world. He doubted anyone there ever truly stopped to ponder such a trivial yet curious topic. The group remembered tales of some ancient founding king who destroyed dragons centuries back. Summing up, the legend says Julius Teslan slew every dragon, took the western land, and made an empire where the kingdom now stands. Eventually, the empire shrank into a kingdom, which then became a vassal of Tulken, as everyone knew. Jack clarified, mentioning 2 dragon lords in the Black Sea, a baby in the Imperial House, 5 in the magical forest. 8 wander this land that I know of, with polymorphs, perhaps 8 more dwell on the same continent. They clearly found such tales hard to accept, as no one they'd known had actually seen a dragon. Amused, the boy laughed, wondering if it wasn't comical since dragons can't mingle with humans at all. An oath that could endanger them forever prohibited such closeness. Jeb, curious, asked if this meant the founding monarch hadn't killed them all, and indeed he hadn't. The king didn't destroy any dragons, shaping a chance to bargain had always been his true intent. In truth, just two mysterious helpers had actually orchestrated all the deeds behind the scenes. But he kept that private, at which point the man asked what those two dragons were doing nowadays. Jack then revealed that what they considered the world was really just a part of it. Their continent was only the West, for the far side of the ocean held other surprises. Accepting the baby, he explained the dragon lords silently guarded the barrier in the Black Sea. Joe, like everyone else, hadn't heard knowledge of the barrier, only knowing it divided continents long ago, and dragon lords inherited the sworn task of guarding it. He too wondered how life unfolded on the other side, curious about the secret East. After their exaggerated discussions, laughter overwhelmed the group, swept away by pure nonsense. The blonde teased Jack, praising his stories and saying surely he sought companions just for conversation on their travels. The boy's smile never faded, despite fully knowing the group would dismiss his words as fantasy. Standing upright, he declared others' opinions didn't matter, signaling it was time for the carriage. The mercenary asked if he was heading to bed, but he just wanted a bath and clean clothes first. Though an escort was offered out of courtesy, Jack kindly refused, preferring to bathe in solitude. Immersed in the water, Jack felt alone, slightly consoled that even honest tales were laughed off by doubters. He believed hiding power was dull, so he overshared. Even so, he thought Joe Nobody unlikely to be a Tulken spy. Though peculiar, both his behavior and the branch manager's actions aroused the same suspicions. Considering everything, Jack sensed this circumstance didn't fit as easily as the others had. He asked Jane to help by recommending mercenaries as travel companions. Yet a mana user of the 8th Circle who shrouded himself in secrecy was not what he'd foreseen. An 8th Circle mage was rare. Such a person would normally lead knights or earn glory, so his path as just a mercenary captain seemed misplaced. Maybe a secret lay hidden, but that could wait. Jack decided to start his mana circuit in the soothing bath. Thanks to the inn and the carriage, the aftermath of the soul speech had faded, so all should be well. Even now, his priority was reaching his master, but wariness over Joe Nobody kept him from traveling alone. He saw only one path, to ask the question to the man directly. Upon returning, the group expressed surprise at his swift bath and sudden return. Now armed with his sword, the boy confessed something disturbed him, ending his soak early. They asked in chorus what troubled him so much. Taking offense, the boy chided them for naivete and demanded to know why Joe Nobody, a powerful 10th Circle mage, was disguised as merely a mercenary, pointing his sword to the cause of his unrest. Jack stated that those journeying to his destination held a purpose too great to trust someone hiding so much. The blonde defended his friend, saying his boss was likewise 8th Circle, prompting Joe Nobody to interrupt and ask what Jack would do if it were true. Jack claims his story was intriguing. Boss was, so it's likewise now his 8th turn to circle here one. He wished to listen to a remarkable tale about the fellow standing before him. German Nobody wonders aloud what might happen if he refuses. He nearer, unsatisfied, he'd suggesting become Jane Pre. And the spy, he nearer teases, threatening that making if a man shake he'd suggesting become Jane Pre said they'd drink together next time. But if he truly was a spy, what made the woman worthy of trust? The leader's gaze shifts instantly as he wonders why the boy suddenly mentions Jane. The MC asks if, after all was revealed, the guy is still ignorant and doesn't wonder if the woman's last meal might be beer. With a bright smile, he asks Joe Nobody's opinion, remarking how amusing things have become. Tension was thick. Jack provoked him far, and yet the man's mana circle stayed still. Caution, or maybe he provoked him far and yet the hesitated, stayed. Either way, fate smiled on him. The boy explains he couldn't fully control his strength and would strike as soon as the circle moved. The decision is simple: live or die, so he offers him a moment to hope for wise choices. Last night at Jane's inn, she told Joe the rumors didn't do justice to how fascinating the child called Jack truly was. She could sense much hidden within him from that young child's eyes alone. It was she who had arranged for Joe Nobody to take on the escort mission. After all, anything can happen, for the future is ever uncertain. A boy like him could shift their fate, who could shun such eyes simply for her sake. In this moment, though, nothing further required words. Joe Nobody felt deeply uneasy from the boy, like prey facing a regal wild beast. His nerves warned that danger lingered, a rather odd realization now he pondered it. He wondered how the child even deduced he belonged to the 8th Circle to begin with. Maybe Jane revealed something, but no, Joe thought to himself. Nobody shakes off that thought. He trusted Jane and was sure she'd mention if she slipped. The boy kept counting down until finally, the man spoke at last. He insists that if he's truly 8th Circle, the boy wouldn't stand any chance against him. The man gazes at the child, marveling at how such intensity burns in such young eyes. Yet he refuses to yield, for the youth before him barely resembles a mere child. While his companion trembles with anxiety, urging him to confess, Job Nobody stands frozen in fear, uncertain where or how to begin. His memories of life as a mercenary flash by, but trusting fate as always, he follows intuition. With time already gone and dissatisfaction clear, removal of the fellow was underway. Just before the boy makes his move, the man quickly speaks up. He actually inquired about Jane's circumstances. Curious, he wonders if the main character understands all the facts. Jobnabadi had only a brief tale to tell. Familiar story, romance between a noble's daughter and a simple man spoken everywhere. Jane was 19 when they met, and by then he had already become 7th circle. Their love was instantaneous, and that affection continued to blossom unfalteringly. Nothing unusual, it was said there's a deeper reason marriage hasn't happened yet. Even commoners or nobles at 8th circle should hold tremendous influence. Choosing mercenary work seemed strange for someone with such stature. Jack thought the leader might be a source of trouble or that profit mattered little to her family. Trying to understand, the protagonist asks whether Jane was only managing a branch of the guild in a minor region. He's merely a mercenary, seizing the moment to wonder if he was approached for possible benefit, a suspicion the man admits yet earns distrust. Such a tale could easily be the product of imagination. Gazing at Joe Nobody, the boy questions him regarding the Empire's interest in the baby dragon. The man counters this inquiry with his own question. How could I know of fairy tales? He asks, prompting a grin as the boy describes masters as those who have carved 10 circles into soul. Even they remain unaware that far beyond, creatures exist who wield soul energy instead of mana. Transcendence, as it's called, astounds all the escorts, except their long-composed leader, while the boy elaborates further. In 2 years, Hankey's Beckerman, a Tulken Imperial Guard knight, will be hailed as the continent's strongest swordsman, the boy foretells. He shares that he will continue chronicling the tales of those lost beings from forgotten times. Yet the unfortunate fellow did not ascend by his own might. Intrigued, the man requested details. Jack reveals the swordsman replaced his blood and bones with a dragon's, becoming a hybrid. Joe's stunned expression reflected what all present felt, shock carved onto every face. Becoming a hybrid had always seemed impossible, so the man asked, how is that relevant now? The boy reveals that within the Tulken Imperial House, only one dragon remains. Despite near immortality with one dragon, there were few opportunities for experiments. So skilled agents were sent abroad for intel and to check for other dragons, which amused the escort leader, who laughed and called it an amazing fictional tale. The boy senses the mercenaries would doubt the man's story, not even glancing their way. Judging from Joe's actions, he likely isn't a spy. Arms crossed, he jokes, now that your suspicions are gone, may you live well with your faithful manager and remember to summon me to the wedding. Something abruptly grabs the boy's attention, and he readies his blade at his back. Jim is caught with a blade to his neck, having tried to draw his weapon prematurely. Jack clearly states that he shows mercy only because Jim was originally doubtful. Drawing close and whispering for his ears only, this is your final warning. If you unleash chaos again, I'll reduce everyone, even you, to ashes. Those words shake the group. They plead for swords to be sheathed and civil discourse. Though the boy tried to close the distance between himself and the group, the gulf between master and subordinate stayed vast. Once calm returns, Jack withdraws to the carriage to rest while the others review the turmoil. One wonders why someone fit to captain Nobility's guard chose the mercenary path. The blonde man recalls their first meeting, where the chief said he was only a 4th circle, a minor fib that had bothered him. Still, since years of shared battles and a life once saved bind them, harshness seemed unfair. The 8th circle's presence reassured all, staking their claim as the continent's strongest troop. With that, the leader could chase kingship among mercenaries, but Joe, ever the skeptic, doubted it, thinking that his comrade, who took it all as bluff, knew such power wouldn't suit a mercenary king. There are at least 4 renowned mercenary masters, but he shrugs, avoiding argument with his friend. A young companion asks if the wild chapter is true, and the chief, shocked but honest, affirms it. Blondie urges calm, noting people all have reasons for choices, though he still wonders about the captain's silence. The memory of the clash still unsettles him, sweat beating as old fears quietly return. His hands continue to shake, haunted by the vivid memory of being so close to the abyss. He refuses to confess how close terror made him lose control. Jane warned the boy was both intriguing and dangerous. The lands were already thrown into upheaval due to the fierce battle over Tulken's throne. Yet this was another matter. Rumors of spies and dragons made him uneasy and eager to probe further. Later in the carriage, Jack offers them a tale, making each mercenary stiffen with dread at his words. The boy questions their knowledge about the true ruler of the magical beast's woods. They reply the beast is of the 9th circle, yet Jack reveals it's actually the 10th. Though visibly shocked, they listen as he insists truth will emerge in time. First, there is history to share. Jack's words pique curiosity as he recalls rumors from 23 years ago about the Forest Lord and the Harpy. The mercenaries confess ignorance, and Jack explains long-standing conflict between Harpies and Orcs. They are always at war, and any forest mercenary knows these two reign over all others there. Sometimes they're trusted as unit guardians due to their vast strength. Jack reveals that the Harpy Queen and Orc King shared a bond, when Blackman rose as Orc Lord, peace ended. After 5 years, trouble arose. This part interests the men and makes the boy grin slightly. Jack continues, saying revelation of Blackman and the Harpies affair sparked revolt among their people. He shares that regardless of being Orc, Harpy or human, lust for power brought about treachery. Both factions used the affair to justify betraying and banishing their own leaders. Their scheme failed, resulting in the destruction of all traitors involved. Joe Nobody inquires why that hostility between the races never faded over the years. Jack explains Blackman and Vala parted for their people's sake, so love lost, animosity endured. Uncertain of the tale's truth, the mercenary chief recalls a time when Harpies and Orcs were tamer. Then decades passed, these two peoples grew formidable and soon claimed dominance in the forest. The MC goes on, the Harpies learned battle from Orcs, Orcs gained the Harpy spiritual secrets. This exchange happened only because Blackman and Vala's choice kept their races divided. Now, embodying the forest, Jack proposes to share a story if Joe Nobody is caught, hoping it might spare him, and the kindly man watching the boy's gentle face consents to the plan. Shifting the topic, he offers Jack dried meat, which Jack gratefully accepts. Jane had prepared this meat, and its flavor was delightful. Far away, events were stirring within the Marquis's stately residence. Disturbing news arrives about the attack on the escorts of the third young lord. The entire group perished by Arbelo's mountains, with experts blaming potent magic. The Marquis is angered as it happened while his finest knights were gone. He suspects royal or ducal involvement, believes a third force acts, and orders Gonzalez to investigate thoroughly, receiving his solemn nod. The elderly man wonders about Jack since the boy's body wasn't found, raising hopes of escape. If that's true, the boy could know useful secrets, so Gonzalez is given full power to learn all he can. Before Gonzalez departs, the Lord murmurs he once took his son for a fool but may have been mistaken. The informant meets the Marquis's eyes in thought, deeply considering the true events as he leaves. A day later at Rocky Mountain's edge, Jack hands Joe Nobody a hefty pouch of coins. Startled by such a sum, the man nervously insists it far exceeds anything he deserves. Jack clarifies he needs only 10 gold coins, along with a few potions for wounds. The rest is a gift, and Jack, offering warmth and thanks for inspiring trust, apologizes for any doubts. Farewell, warmth, and so Jack thanks for wishes his inspiring trust companions fortune as they travel home. Yet the man remains rooted to the spot, prompting Jack to ask why they still linger. Joe Nobody prefaces he may be out of line but requests to speak his mind anyway. With Jack's approval, he says mercenary work isn't as grim as the boy imagines, and misreading Jack's silence, attempts to better explain. He notes that regardless of details, he sees young noble heirs without allies meet misfortune, adding that total solitude for a third son is both rare and worrisome. Jack wonders if this is a suggestion to become a mercenary, and Joe reassuringly repeats that the path isn't as bleak as believed. Avoiding dangerous jobs, one could safely travel the lands and enjoy a steady, peaceful living. Jack gestures at his peers, knowing only Joe Nobody understands what truly happened that harrowing night. If the boy had wanted, he could have defeated the man with ease, even withholding his real power. The older man grieved that he would never be a mercenary, for he saw Jack's true potential. He admits to forgetting the past, once forced to take up a sword, hiding his true strength even from friends. Struggling with guilt, he confesses. Jack responds, thanking him but choosing to ignore the blame. Since Joe Nobody was special without saying much, Jack hints at a looming Western event and urges the man to hide, leaving him puzzled. Jack explains it will all make sense at the right moment. He'll know through an unmistakable feeling. It will hit hard, an uncontrollable force urging escape that would be impossible to withstand. Handing him coins, Jack cautions, don't endanger your life for gold, nothing's worth more than staying alive. Agreeing fully, the man makes Jack feel understood as he pats him on the shoulder and prepares to return, with Jack once again warning them to use caution before heading alone into the forest. Joe Nobody asks if he may know Jack's real name, prompting a knowing smile from Jack when he realizes suspicions were right. Jack introduces himself simply, wanting only to be remembered as such without any grand titles. Jack seizes the chance, asking for Joe Nobody's real name, which makes the man hesitate. He states his true identity is Dynastismo. The protagonist replies that if destiny is kind, their paths will cross again one day. Jack then presses on, using magic to cross a vast bridge swiftly on his continued path. Nearing his goal, Jack faces giant stones, surviving them through his sheer resilience alone. Still, Jack grows weary, no longer moving with speed, so he pauses to steady his breaths. At a dark hollow, he lights the path with mana to verify that he's arrived where he must be. Just ahead, a towering stone barrier must be crossed to finally reach the master he once found long ago. He stumbled upon the place before in his flight from childhood misery and the pain that fueled his escape. Jack pours liquid from his flask on the ancient wall as he readies his sword in his firm grasp. Now all that remains is quietly tracing the sharp edge of the blade with his trembling hand. A sacrifice is needed. Jack gazes at the sword, knowing this modest action carries glad significance. Long before returning to age 17, Jack knew only running and hiding as he had always done. Losing Ron back then with no better options remaining, running seemed the single choice for him. With trembling fingers struggling to finish the act, he cried helplessly, tears like those of a child. For someone like him, opening the stone cave had felt nothing short of miraculous. He stood once again in the situation he had found himself in so long ago. This time would be changed. As he crossed the doors, the boy's confident steps betrayed his growing familiarity with the place. He went down the steps lit by a lonely lamp, while nervousness slowly grew within him. It was no wonder, since over 10 years had slipped by since his last journey here. At the staircase's end, the sight ahead dropped him weeping to his knees. His master was there, bound by chains as before, her eyes wide at the boy's call. Jack questioned if life could ever become eternal, holding the faint hope of immortality. He considered that not just rulers but all forms would end. Neither monsters nor emperors survived time. So universal this truth, it appeared unbending even for the woman before him, his ancient master who had lasted centuries with soul-body separation. Yet it was magic which maintained a fragile living link between them. Now even that wondrous spell neared exhaustion. They had first met when he was 10, but nothing now was the same. This time no more than 13 years were left beside his beloved teacher, who, as a figure in chains, questioned if the boy really called her master, stirring his feelings. He had yearned desperately for her voice, nostalgia washing over him as he finally heard it again. She asks with curious wonder who he really is and playfully suggests guessing. Adala wondered if the boy was joking and insisted he reveal himself now, since there would not be a next time. Chuckling since there would not attitude be a next time seemed no gentler with age, stating how terribly he missed her, deepening her confusion. She was intrigued by a disciple she could not recall and asked if he knew her real identity. The boy nodded. How could he forget someone so precious when their shared time meant more than any dream, treasured in memory alone? To him, their moments remained real, so he named himself the hero who led a new era, startling Valentine Milos, the mighty sorceress, by declaring himself her disciple from the future. She distrusted fables and challenged him about knowing her distaste for such tales. He answered he knew perfectly well, because stories inevitably warp the truth with opinion. Annoyed, she said she ought to call him a boy with the makings of a storyteller, then asked how she, in such a situation, would reply to him, demanding his answer. An uneasy mood thickened, yet all the boy recalled was her signature reply, simple, yet distant. That no doubt mirrored what she would say, showing he had perfectly captured her nature. She playfully claims the boy spins impressive tales and could profit from them, which slightly irks him as he addresses her as master. The woman quickly corrects him, never a master to anyone. She shows through her words that she remains unchanged. Knowing words fall short, the boy rises with newfound resolve and boldly aims his sword at the chained woman. He apologizes for his impudence, but admits it was necessary for what needed to be done. With her gaze on the weapon, the woman suddenly realizes Jack wields the power of soul aura. He acknowledges his rudeness and vows to accept any penalty, but insists on fulfilling his mission. Her anxiety grows as she warns him that breaking her chains will bring ruin to everything around them. Jack aims to do precisely that, unwavering as he steps closer to the woman who mentored Julius Teslin, the famed hero. Julius, once making a vow to rescue his mentor, never returned to fulfill that solemn promise. After 50 years, she finally came to recognize Julius had forsaken her completely. With swift determination, Jack shatters every dragon bone chain, immobilizing her. Valentine shrieks in fear as she fears falling, yet Jack catches her and asserts he is unlike the unreliable Julius because he follows words with deeds. Barely restraining her tears at memories of old, she's suddenly interrupted by the chaos of destruction. With rubble crashing down, Jack urges her to cling tightly as the ceiling threatens to collapse. Knowing Earth is malleable, Jack simultaneously unleashes 4 arts: mountain, wind, woods, and fire. Cradling the woman in his arms, he unleashes mana intense enough to level colossal peaks. In awe, she queries about his true nature, but Jack repeats that he remains just her disciple, his origin immaterial. Surprised by his youth and skill, the MC quips that he's a disciple from the future and hints at the 13 years they'll journey as companions. With suspicion lingering, she moves in closer, searching his face to weigh his honesty. This time, her voice softens as she tentatively asks if he truly hails from the future. Jack clarifies that it's truly more of a remaining in the past than a genuine voyage ahead. She sensed an honesty behind his words, accepting his claim as genuine. Upon sensing her trust, Jack suddenly collapses, unable to rejoice choice in his triumph. The master cautions him, noting forced connections are inevitably doomed to fail. Jack responds that if he hadn't taken such bold action, their link could never have existed at all. Yet such a connection was nothing she truly called a relationship. Valentine notes his talents for debate despite suffering and wonders from whom he inherited this stubbornness. Seizing the moment, he introduces himself as Jack, her future disciple, and promises loyalty to her teachings. After 5 days in Arsenal's territory, Jack questioned how his master stayed silent for so long. He wondered if she was sorting her thoughts or chose silence consciously. Initially, she guessed he was a descendant of House Tessin, but quickly realized it was unthinkable. No one his age could wield soul aura. She began to explain its nature, waiting for Jack to finish the idea. If Jack answered badly, he knew punishment awaited, just as in his past life. He says only a rare few mana masters possess such a formidable soul power. His master agreed but pointed out that the energy his soul amassed was even stranger. He smiled, though eager to share his previous existence. Valentine's silence stifled the chance. She noticed his hands held greater shadow than hers, astonishing both her and Jack himself. She wonders aloud if he's reflected on why he was given the rare chance of regression, though he'd pondered her thoughts for days. Truly, her sole interest lay in understanding the riddle of his return in time. His memories of remorseless destruction rise. Jack confessed pondering it, yet clueless as to why he was favored. Noticing her sternness, he asks her to relax, explaining someone must have orchestrated this, for his own will played no part. Should someone appear as the cause, he would meet them, but meanwhile their current moments mattered most. She admits his words were lovely, then inquires about his intentions from here onward. Jack says his goal is to gain a trusted partner, someone with whom to safely share his journey. On the night he saved Valentine, he fell badly sick in the aftermath. He secretly downed 2 potent potions, barely surviving several days close to death. His body now needed a loyal protector, someone to defend and assist when no strength remained. Still, today's task was simpler. He planned to go shopping with a companion. He also sought a new blade when suddenly a hurried girl collided with them, dropping her flowers in a fluster. Flustered, she excused herself, saying haste had left her no time. Jack admitted he too lost focus and gently inquired if she felt all right. Suddenly realizing his own longing for companionship as she gathered her flowers, Jack asked if she could consider marrying him. Her surprise was obvious, but Jack offered all he carried as a token for his unexpected request. She politely refused, explaining his offer was overly generous. She kindly said that just 1 coin was enough, as it matched her basket's worth perfectly. So Jack paid her, and in return she gave him every single flower she had. Before leaving, she bowed in haste while Jack observed quietly, unmoving. His master softly noted it had been many years since she'd met a child of the night. Jack echoed her words absently, then grew serious, questioning the master's thought since he sensed nothing odd about the girl. Valentine was baffled, thinking he'd sensed the child's nature, whereas he simply chose her for the ability he saw in her if trained well. Resting on his shoulder, she marveled at his obliviousness, hinting he had much to learn. Jack laughed and asked for her guidance, which she said relied on his own actions. She told him he remained unchanged in her eyes, despite experiencing regression. Even now, the green-haired master felt unsettled, for the girl stirred a sense of familiarity in her. Memories flowed back, her mind pictured a golden-haired child twirling within a sunlit garden. Finally, everything felt clear, though it saddened her that the girl now lived such a humble life. Meanwhile, Jack knew that after their errands, his next step would be to find someone dear. Night creatures as strong as dragons came to mind as the clerk spoke. Jack recalled the ancient clash with them a decade before. That war started when the vampires made their escape from the enchanted beast-haunted forests. Although they lost, some used the war as cover to disappear, so the girl from earlier was likely a fugitive's daughter. Yet Jack truly felt at peace with her background, whether she was kin to night creatures or not. The clerk continued to admire his sword, but her endless praise started to wear on his patience. He broke off the conversation, asked her to finish up, and told his master he'd found his first recruit. Yet doubt filled her. Did he realize the gravity of choosing one born of night? But Jack insisted that children are blameless, untouched by the burdens of history. His master claimed he was making excuses to justify his choice, which caused Jack to chuckle. Long ago, she formed a peace pact with each race's rulers, including the Dragon Lords. This deal forbade all non-human races from meddling in the human realm's affairs. Thus, the magical beings fled to the Mystic Forest, though that occurred 400 years back. Consequently, most monarchs who made the pact now lie peacefully in their graves. Though free from old oaths, the creatures remain trapped beneath the dragon's watchful gaze. As creatures that lived 2 millennia, the dragons ruled sternly, upholding the ancient deal. Burdened by restraint yet wise in her choice, the master acted justly in her confinement. Yet Jack believes dragons should have been hunted and ended as he did in his past life, handling matters himself. Watching the young vampire, Jack sees a merchant ruffle her hair and calls Valentine, who notices her scarred fingers. Jack soothes her, saying no fault lies with her. Though lacking every fact, Jack felt sure of things and told all he was, above all else, her student. She tells him to act as he wishes, but never let the blonde have his juice, which only puzzles him. The child, above all, should enjoy proper meals, not be placed under needless limitations. Later, blushing from Jack's gentle words, she obediently brings her mother orc juice, following family rules. Her mother constantly told her to never drink human juice under any circumstance. The rule was strictest regarding juice that her uncle provided to the family. She wondered whether he'd drop in to visit that evening as she called out her arrival. She heard only silence, so she entered her mother's room, asking if she slept. The woman, feeble, warned of a visitor, and only then did the girl see Jack. Suddenly anxious, the child splashed a little of the juice by mistake. Meanwhile, Valentine asked the ill woman to reveal her face for everyone present to see. Obediently, she turned, uncovering vivid eyes the color of the coldest crystal lake. Unseen for years, the sorceress softly murmured as the woman stared back, startled and amazed. She questioned why the noble and illustrious progenitor Vivienne Royale lingered in such disrepair and gloom. Outdoors, as the blonde girl plays with fond abandon, Jack, though tired, keeps one cautious eye on the house and hopes for a peaceful conversation. Vivian eyed Valentine with suspicion and asked if her companion was perhaps a vampire hunter. Valentine was genuinely surprised her true self was not recognized at first glance. She calls herself Valentine Milos, whose name chills Vivian, confessing to locking vampires in the beastly woods, her sworn foe. Her quivering words betray her terror, yet she aims to remain strong in the face of an old rival. A scratchy cough interrupts. Valentine says a curse lets her live as human once each month. Frankly, she demands again how a vampire progenitor could ever become so pitiful. Seeing Vivian has avoided her red drink for ages, she demands an answer for this frail state. The vampire slyly asks if Valentine now pities her, recalling when the mage's might was unmatched. She claims not to resent the forest's past since the woman spared them from annihilation by humans. Thus, Vivian decides she would answer the inquiry. Vivian tells her that 5 tyrants and 2 lords once ruled over the vampires in those woods. They tried to flee with her young daughter during war, haunted by memory of the pitying dragon granting exile. The notion lingers in Valentine as Vivian shares the price. Their daughter's safety meant only animal blood and exile. It was a humiliating fate for nobility, and the sorceress couldn't help but point that out. Outdoors, Charlotte impatiently asks when Jack will go, adding her uncle dislikes guests, yet Jack insists on discovering more. He's unsettled by Jack's sudden wish to meet her uncle. She hints Jack befriended her to rob her relative, leaving Jack quietly hurt. Jack says waiting is dull, and urges her for details about the mysterious uncle. Pondering what secrets to tell, the blonde remembers only how wealthy the uncle is. Charlotte explains he granted them the house and reliably brings supplies every 3rd day. She must have meant the animal blood when food was mentioned. Before Jack's curiosity is addressed, a voice rings out, wondering if the uncle finally showed up. A vibrantly haired man eyes the stranger, suspects the boy, and remarks he's never seen him prior. Charlie grows excited at the man's entrance, though the air remains uneasy. As the MC eyes him, he celebrates the renowned uncle, the tiny blonde, noticing his noble look. Jack stays unreadable, recognizing the dragon in disguise as he had anticipated. As the newcomer interrogates him, he senses another inside, while Vivian quietly asks the doll for Charlotte's help. Outdoors, the atmosphere bristled between Jack and the stranger, until his master spoke in his mind. He reports the man's presence to his mistress, who instructs him to escort the child and guest upstairs. The stranger inquires about Jack's murmurs, but Jack says he simply adheres to his master's will. He then opens the entrance and summons everyone inside. Jack is aware the man arrives merely to witness the final hours of these living toys. Once inside, Charlotte's mother tries to talk, but her face shows anguish when the visitor appears. The man remarks on her expression, insisting he won't disrupt her closing moments with her daughter. Charlotte, weeping, asks if her mother's in pain and begs her to drink the orc juice she brought. Believing it could help, but her mother softly refuses and thanks her for the heartfelt birthday gift. The girl keeps asking, unable to grasp the situation, as onlookers silently observe the exchange. Initially, no greater purpose brought them all there, other than fate's coincidence. Now, they found themselves bearing witness to someone's impending death. Jack then questions if her name is Vivian and requests trust with Charlotte, inventing his own reason to linger. The woman hesitates, prompting him to clarify. Does she want her daughter reborn as vampire queen or ancestor ruler? Or if neither, should he instead bring an end to dragons who treat vampires as mere playthings? His offer amuses the in-house dragon, provoking an ironic grin. Vivian struggles but invites Jack closer, confiding that her only wish is for Charlotte to know joy. All other desires pale beside that hope. Asking his name, she smiles weakly upon hearing Jack Valent and entrusts Charlotte to him, to which he promises lifelong care. For the last time, Viven calls Charlotte to her, confesses her love, and fades away before her child's gaze. Charlotte cries out, grasping for her mother as she vanishes, unable to accept such a loss. All the while, Jack and Valentine stand silent, simply watching events unfold. Then the false uncle breaks the silence with manic laughter, amused at the enormity of the burden thrust on a mere child, both soon to depart. Mocking malnourished vampires, he laughs until Jack, incensed, hits him with mana-charged anger. The strike throws the man backward, though he grouses about Jack's behavior, deeming him unfit for Charlotte. As he threatens to punish, Valentine steps in and demands his true name, leaving him baffled. It was strange, since there wasn't a hint of magic in the entire place. Yet amazingly, the doll was speaking to him directly and in real time. She disregards his confusion and brings up the 5 absent dragons meant to be in the woods. "You're only 2 centuries old. Were you hatched as a grown dragon during that time?" She questions, his eyes burning. How can a doll be privy to such hidden truths? "Just what sort of strange being are you?" he snarls, anger brimming over. Hearing the insult against his master, Jack boils with hate. Valentine requests to be set down, claiming she can stand alone. She formally declares herself as Valentine Milos, ancient sorceress, shocking the dragon. "Impossible." He asks incredulously if she's the immortal necromancer, and she nods, familiar with that label. Unconvinced, the dragon clenches his jaw, calling her a bold impostor. Valentine then cites Bahamut and Valort, secret names only dragons or their witnesses recall. This knowledge sways him, astonished she still survives after all those years. He finally reveals himself with pride as Valactes Macavely, fire dragon of the Macavely bloodline. Scoffing at this poor place, he admits he only wants to erase the child from his toy's troubled legacy, prompting Valentine to demand he retreat. The man teases her, asking if she forgot the pact, claiming mighty dragons only pitied other races except for humans. So why does she command him? Yet Valentine insists she was always the merciful one, not him. Annoyed, he listens as she reveals the old agreement, declaring dragons were never actually compassionate. Races grew apart because dragons saw themselves as exalted above anyone else. She cannot believe that even after that ancient war, they haven't bothered to change their ways. The dragon laughs, calling her a shadow of bygone days, but Jack furiously interrupts, calling him a revolting reptile and saying he would have stayed quiet out of manners. Yet he wonders how an arrogant beast can pretend at humanity in front of Jack's master. Mocked, the dragon swears to rip Jack apart, his talons gleaming menacingly. Undaunted, Jack launches at him and deals a mighty kick, slamming the dragon to the wall. Jack presses his foot to the vanquished's chin, stating, "Show Valentine true respect from now on." The dragon spits and curses, baffled that a mere human dared challenge a noble dragon like him. Growing weary, Jack commands him to stop the rambling and look down before it all comes to an end. Yet the dragon grasps his foot and hurls him upward, boasting he can do anything with Valentine Milos' support. Charlotte weeps as the MC muses how Ron would panic seeing him so grimy and unkempt. "Your uncle is truly hopeless," he remarks, and the girl finally recognizes his real nature. The realization breaks her and she bursts into tears, understanding what truly went on all this time. Jack gently takes her hand, urging her to look at Galactes, and explains Monster destroyed her people and family. Trelot seeks to defend him, but Jack says that with her assent he'd end that bloodline once and for all. At that instant, all that truly mattered was the response that would come from the blonde, nothing else. Jack promises, "Let me show you the strength of the one who will protect you," charging with his sword. Yet the vampire's speed overwhelms, as he neatly avoids every blow struck by Jack. Their struggle resumes, and once again, Jack cannot manage to land a hit on his agile foe. Taunting him, the vampire says he expected more magic given all Jack's boasting, but found nothing great. Just as the insult lingers, Jack slices off his hair, grins, and says now none will get in the way of a real duel. Enraged by the sudden attack, Valactes hurls the cruelest slurs the moment catches hold of him. Fed up, he unleashes cutting winds at Jack, who astounds everyone as he holds fast and blocks it. Even Valentine is left speechless, as the boy nullifies dragon magic with his budding power. Battle rages until the boy slams the vampire down, stomping full force onto his opponent's face. In that moment, Jack connects his foe's identity. Macavely, son of Luca Machiavelli from the magical Beast Woods. The revelation shocks the vampire, who pales, realizing Jack knew his father, one of the 5 rulers of that wild wood. Jack recalls slaying the dragon in a former life, though he never faced this descendant until today. Considering his condition, perhaps he vanished early from home or chose to linger in hiding somewhere. Jack questions why he imitates his father, but Macavely snarls and threatens the stranger, asking him to reveal himself. Jack announces, "I am the first and last student of Valentine Milos, the woman you detest." The vanquished foe wonders how a human shattered his supposedly unbeatable soul magic. The moment felt pitiful, he didn't appear to recognize the world's mightiest being before him. Jack demands apologies to his master and, threatening Valactes, claims that disobedience would mean erasure without a trace, as he had once done to another. Tense silence envelops everyone as the countdown continues, and they hold their breaths. At the final moment, Valente unfolds his dragon wings and soars away, choosing to retreat. He knows he must return to the forest and alert others while Jack looks up, aware the situation is now dire. Summoning the sword's true form, Jack calls forth a swirling vortex of mana overhead. The flying foe is astonished. It's the first of 4 strengths starting with the sky. With dread, Valente gazes at the sky, grasping at last the monster now opposing him. Inside the whirlwind of black and white, Valente cannot escape and sees Jack's gigantic figure giving chase as he screams in terror. Suddenly, the boy bolts upright in a strange and lavish bedroom he's never seen before. Looking around in confusion, he watches Ron enter and express surprise at his awakening. The servant rapidly asks questions about his senses and memories, evaluating his state. Jack, irritated, asks for no more questions, assuring he is fine but seeking an explanation. He first inquires about the girl and the doll. The butler assures him Charlotte is next door resting. The butler adds that, unsure of what happened, she looked completely exhausted. Valentine stretches on the sofa, and as Jack confirms her identity, he greets her. She corrects him, pointing out it's afternoon, whose unexpected speech startles the butler who, worried, asks if she's upset. He curtly declares her autonomy and Jack chuckles, suggesting she was concerned for him. Ron curiously wonders how a motionless doll could suddenly speak after 3 days. Jack promises to explain later and emphasizes the importance of treating Valentine kindly. Ron agrees without hesitation to respect the given instructions. Still unsure but relying on his master sense, the butler tries to condense recent complicated events. The escort's remains were located in the mountains, drawing the Marquis's attention naturally. Thus, the noble house dispatched knights to investigate, and suspecting Jack's link, they pursued him. Moreover, various individuals reportedly sighted him within the town of Arbelo. Following hints, they arrived in Assen, where a legendary aerial battle with a dragon raged. At that moment, they discovered the main character lying unconscious. Uncertain of the events but seeing his dire state, they brought him to the temple for help. Ron found that the boy drank 3 potent potions with a strawberry flavor all alone. Amused by the taste matching his favorite, the boy laughs, while Jack asks why the servant was present, not with Elizabeth as pledged. Flustered, the butler admits Elizabeth had wished to come, but the Marquis had denied her. Instead, Ron and an investigative unit arrived with the Marquis's direct endorsement. Jack is astonished, realizing his father was even less wise than he'd thought. Mood shifts as the Marquis's red-haired informant enters unannounced. Jack promptly inquires, "What do you want?" While the spy, startled to see him up, says, "I am Gonzalez, vice-captain of the Iron Blood Knights overseeing the inquiry." With scorn, he asks Jack if he knows it's unbecoming for someone of his status to choose a commoner as company. Critiquing the boy's skills and sense of decorum, he is interrupted as Jack silences the room, allowing Gonzalez to continue. Then Gonzalez informs everyone that he'll be asking some questions. The butler testifies he supplied 3 high-grade potions to the house's 3rd master, so he could only employ them thrice. This steadiness stuns the informant, who remembered a timid youth. The redhead reveals Jack is the sole survivor of the guard incident and seeks answers. Evasively, the boy says little happened aside from odd orders to have his bones broken, but pauses upon seeing Gonzalez's worried look, realizing the man didn't know all. Gonzalez presses for more, asking if it really was as chaotic as it sounds. Offhandedly, Jack shares what the group's knight leader intended. The informant asks if he means Ryzison, and Jack nods, recalling their threat to ruin his mana circle. The boy says plainly that he eliminated them all, leaving the red-haired man speechless. Yet Jack reiterates, making it evident that he felt no remorse. It is now obvious the act came from within, rather than outside forces. Gonzalez is left speechless by the truth that Jack committed the deed himself. "Clearly, I never let a betrayer go," the boy asserts, asking if he seems to be joking. The knight warns him not to speak carelessly, insults Ron as useless, putting Jack on edge. Instantly, the main character decks the redhead. He tolerated insults silently twice before. However, dizziness overtakes him and he falls atop the bed, startling the loyal butler. He reassures Ron that he's all right, mentioning the man there was merely his 7th circle. He asks if Ron isn't weary of the act, which brings a faint, knowing grin to the butler. Clutching his shirt, the boy asks Ron to stop his act, realizing people deserve better treatment. Clearly, Ron found joy in finally experiencing such honest freedom. While Ron prepares to move, Jack wonders aloud if 5 minutes is enough to deal with him. The butler jokes that 5 minutes is generous for his skills. It was not about actual food. It was clear to all, though labeled a servant, Ron hunts Gonzalez with commanding force. Even as the redhead struggles, Ron sweeps him aside easily with his 9th circle talents. The guards outside marvel at how a servant could stir up such chaos by himself. Jack observes the fight, detached, sulking as he tries recalling where he saw such tactics. Although a man of the 9th, Ron's skills were mystical. Hand-to-hand was not his strength. By rights, Gonzalez should have held the upper hand, yet he was easily subdued. Even as a trained Tulken spy, Jack knows he couldn't prevail in a bout against Ron. In desperation, the informant swipes a blade from a guard, aiming for a last-ditch assault. But before a move is made, Ron knees his face brutally, utterly crushing his pride. The boy's spirits lift as he witnesses this long-overdue act of justice. The servant had bided his time under ridicule, finally standing defiantly against it all. Assessing his downed foe, Ron looks back when Jack calls out to him. Jack jokes, "What's taking so long?" But Ron notices Gonzalez rising to attack and punches him out. Needs a little more practice. Jack taunts while the guards get chastised for behaving like idle onlookers. Once alone, the boy grabs the redhead by the hair and says, "Now, time for a real talk." He proposes a bargain, claiming someone with his skill could achieve far more in life. Despite being humiliated, Gonzalez tries to mock Ron until the boy pulls his hair, saying, "Do you get your place now?" Maintaining his grip, he announces his deal. Gonzalez may keep his rank and nurture his powers. Given his age and talent, sparing him makes sense, so he asks the knight if he'd aim for the 8th circle. The knight's eyes betray his growing interest in the prospect. Jack promises their agreement remains secret. Ron suspects his motives yet feels proud inside. Sudden interruption snaps the moment as Valentine taps the servant's shoulder. He quickly apologizes for missing her and moves to introduce himself formally. "You possess the Sword family's energy," the woman remarks, unsettling him completely. Valentine notes he's off balance and deduces Ron was powerful, attaining the 9th circle long ago. She remarks, "You could have reached the 10th circle," meaning he had the potential for mastery. Ron remains puzzled, not catching her meaning about mastery over the soul. 19 years had passed since Ron depended on mana, only using it for Jack when necessary. Butler ponders, feeling no shame amid disrespect from others. He had chosen his path as a servant freely and with dignity. Valentine questions his lifelong devotion to a boy, realizing obvious talent has a source. Indeed, a member of the Sword clan guarding someone must mean that life holds worth. She asks if he knows the child's secret, but Ron honors Jack's privacy and what he's been told. Ron imagines Jack's confused reaction if he overheard this mysterious Sword family discussion. Jack returns, warning he might punish the redhead, but decides not to this time. He again extends the vice captain offer in little expectation, while watching the others' panic grow. Tired of pain, best stay silent, Jack says, seated on his chest to press the point. Skillfully, he seeks out 7 mana circles near the redhead's heart, hoping there's no ill will. As Gonzalez shifts, Jack holds him, explaining he could have ended his mana if he wished. Mana swirls fiercely, shuffling the static circles and invoking sharp, throbbing aches. As Gonzalez opens his eyes, he realizes 8 circles now mark his presence. The boy quietly says pain will last 5 months, leaving all present stunned by his strength. Even the messenger found it hard to grasp how the boy forged such power for himself. Now forced to obey every word or be doomed, Gonzalez hears the talk of forbidden magic with dread as the young master grins darkly. Jack's memory races to the moment he struck Phelan and to the tales his father spread afterward. With each revelation, Gonzalez only confirmed what all had heard to be absolute truth. It was certain now the boy truly possessed knowledge of forbidden spellcraft. Commanding the redhead to listen closely or risk pain, he readies to carve his lesson deep. Gonzalez must return home, declaring that the 3rd young master is entirely uninformed. Within 3 months, the Marcus family must lose 40 secret troublemakers in complete stealth. The redhead consents until he realizes Jack had entwined something far greater into his heart. It was a binding rule. The main character reassures him, gently gripping his shoulders, "Do not fear. If you comply, immense rewards await," promises the boy, likening the power to an enticing potion. Laughing at fate's game, he notes he always guessed Gonzalez would crave more than before. He recalls how Gonzalez shamefully treated Ron during the journey they shared together. Now that the tables have shifted, Jack says the redhead will serve the butler without question. Gonzalez lowers his gaze, quietly voicing his acceptance of the new arrangement. Satisfied, the protagonist dismisses Gonzalez from the room, pleased with his newly gained follower. Hoping the next recruit is more compliant, Jack checks if Ron has spoken with Valentine and gets a nod. Craving food, Jack is challenged about wearing rags, despite his obvious hunger pains. The diligent mage, unsurprised, had already laid out a change of clothes with usual care. As they leave, Charlotte interrupts, embracing the boy with worry trembling in her words. "I feared you'd sleep forever," she murmurs while he warmly returns her emotional hug. He orders their cherished food be served, so he may share a special meal with the vampire. He marvels at the blonde's strength, all the more since she has never tasted a proper drink. Outside, the orange sunset bathes them as Jack regrets having shattered her home. Charlotte admits the apartment is meaningless now, since without her mother it isn't truly home. Jack holds her softly, explaining he too lost his mother when he was a small child. Charlotte is surprised, hearing Yoon, and asks if happiness can be found serving others. He uses mana to lift juice into the air, introducing the hungry vampire to a fantastical flavor. Once she sips, Charlotte immediately feels invigorating energy surge inside her body. Her vampiric strength became active in that moment. Vampires equal dragons by regenerating rapidly with the force granted by potent lifeblood. Even while bewildered, Charlotte beams with happiness surpassing anything she'd expected. Jack asks about her feelings from earlier, recalling his vow to use power to show his worth. She admits his display was frightening but thrilling, calling him OA with pure admiration. Jack gently edits her nickname to Boss, making her burst out laughing as she repeats it. Inside, Ron is stunned upon learning Jack overcame a dragon that was already fully mature. He details that dragons younger than 50 are adept, wielding a fifth circle mana heart. Their dragonoid transformations shrink their size for efficient combat as humans. A dragon shifts forms for magical expertise or powerful hand-to-hand combat as situations demand. If Valactes hadn't let him use soul speech, Jack might have perished. Ron scolds him to eat vegetables since he's growing. Yet that's irrelevant as the MC resumes, dismissing the dragon as a novice with little sense. Despite Jack being only second circle, he did tremendous harm, noticing the peculiar conversation. Normally, striking down dragons is unimaginable. If the Fire Ant mercenaries discovered the truth, they'd surely be astonished beyond belief. The butler flushes on realizing Jack deduced his deep dragon knowledge because he appeared all-knowing. Still, the boy clarifies he revealed only the man's fate, demonstrating how he pieced things together. Ron muses that many secrets the master missed would stay hidden, as he'd never been drawn to lengthy tales though he'd lived carefully before. As they escaped from House Marquest, the butler ensured his hidden truths weren't revealed. Each person deserves to keep their secrets veiled within. Jack thanked him yet needed to settle a deep suspicion, so he met Ron's gaze and inquired about any allegiance with the Tulken Empire. With honest confusion, Ron swears he holds no ties to those distant lands. Relief swept through Jack, the tension of long-held worries leaving his frame. The soft curvature of his lips betrayed his intent not to trouble his steadfast friend. Weary after the fight, he knew a new mana circle must be drawn once more. Each spell drained him, demanding stronger, more resilient circles to ease the burden. Valentine surprised him with her astonishment, realizing he embraced a forbidden bond only she could craft. In times of conflict, that furious magic made oaths soul-deep, binding fate to promise. Breaking such a pact would destroy more than one's power. It ravages the entire being. When asked his reason for etching a mark on Gonzal's heart, Jack explained it was a spell for Gonzal to protect Elizabeth and Ron. This moved Ron nearly to tears at witnessing his master's deep care for his safety. Suddenly, Charlotte hurried in, weeping after the maids had treated her like some delicate toy. Jack offered her supper but she declined, unaccustomed to such generous meals. Next, he asked Ron if Charlotte might accompany classmates to the academy. Ron balked, convinced it was too overwhelming a task for a simple servant. But Jack reminded him he was not merely a servant but one remarkable in skill. As his praise fell short, Jack claimed he'd manage on his own, only to be gently rebuked for such a threat. He answered by insisting he was no scoundrel to commit such acts. Charlotte's eyes sparkled at the idea of school and he promised she could go, for children belong among their peers. Her golden talent gleamed too brightly for neglect. Although only 11 and admission began at 14, Gonzalez's letter would resolve the matter. He therefore reassured her there would be no difficulties ahead. Day's messenger, as using later, upon reaching the academy, Ron said farewell, handed him his bag and wished him well. For upon help at any time, clear as they Ron parted. Jack asked to take full charge of the Marcus house, requesting that all matters be his alone. He insisted the servant realize the boy needed peace to devote himself entirely to academy studies. Ron agreed and Jack remarked that Gonzalez lacked wit, displaying his disdain for the man. He viewed Gonzalez as nothing but a tool, to be used then discarded without a hint of regret. The protagonist adds he had given Gonzalez precise instructions, intending for the sermon to assist. The order involved cutting off hands and legs, clarifying he spoke not of literal limbs. Instead, the plan targeted Marcus house officials and members of the Count Mantis family. Deliberate and harsh, this scheme would complicate Miss Elizabeth's life, given her innocence. Jack didn't desire Elizabeth to change, but believed the downfall of that house might spark her shift. He requested Ron to protect her, revealing both care and shrewdness. Ron, feeling honored, mentions the master's transformation, which Jack acknowledges. Once at the academy, the doll remarks that though he harbors a monster within, Jack can be called good. The main character compliments the doll, asserting she's good-natured despite her stubbornness. She rejects this, calling it empty, standing strong. When Charlotte first sees the academy's grandeur, admiration lights her features. Jack advises Charlotte to observe calmly since the academy would soon become her world, making her glow. Staff member comes up asking if he's from Valente, to which the blonde replies automatically. She embraces the boy warmly as he wonders if her approach hid another intention. She asks permission, saying the headmaster awaits Jack in his office, urging haste in her voice. She notes that Jack is recognized there, bearing a past both dark and unforgettable. The once blood-soaked air of nobility found among ruined buildings still haunted tales to this day. Though time had flowed, the story lingered, as former Duke Ramel Assembal kept the ruins unchanged. Memories overwhelmed Jack. He reimagines that same room and a talk about a pivotal exam. He asked if that was his sole duty, lamenting the classes missed. The headmaster assured him that a name on the ranking protected him from expulsion. Jack's downcast gaze reflected disappointment, certain his brother and father plotted against him. He believed they would act before his maturity arrived, a hard truth the headmaster did not deny. Though he'd seen many such children, the man only offered Jack a private room, while loneliness and betrayal clawed at the boy's soul. The headmaster gently taps his head, declaring that his future must be a choice he alone makes. Now in his current life, the boy stands taller, grinning as he bets the headmaster, leaving him astonished. He says he owes a man a debt and finally intends to repay it, asking for a favor to shift fate's course. Upon hearing this, Ramel remarks how the wounded, silent child he found is now greatly changed. To the headmaster, a month has passed, but Jack endured 20 years, long enough for change and growth. Intrigued, the old man inquires how he will save his life, as the kingdom faces destruction within the month. Though Tesla fought valiantly, their foes held 30 masters, many being dragon-blooded hybrids. Tulken boasted 1,000 skilled mana users, while their rivals barely managed 2 masters and 100 elites. With such a gap, not only would a month suffice, but 3 days with a sharp commander would win it. Only Headmaster Ramel and his band of battle mages, numbering about 700, kept Teslan from falling. Had there been no accident, or more truly, betrayal by a trusted advisor, they could have survived 2 extra months. At the traitor's mention, the headmaster's shock fills his eyes as he reprimands Jack, who stands undaunted. He replies evenly, "Brutus Marcos is a Tulken spy, swords instructor, 6th Circle knight and vassal." Ramel, with obvious doubt, claims it's defamation, and Jack will regret not heeding his cautions. Still, the boy offers only a calm smile in response. "One day he'll betray you and you'll wish you'd listened," the MC teases, testing Ramel's resolve. The headmaster angrily warns Jack to be responsible and prefers to erase the entire exchange from memory. Ultimately, he dismisses the boy, retrieves a pocket watch with a crest, and ensures nothing will be repeated. Solemnly, he has Jack summon Brutus, who offers faint praise but adds there's no need to keep spying. Brutus freezes, bewildered by the teen's words, while Jack only laughs at the shocked reaction. Losing patience, the boy mocks Brutus, urging him to avoid pointless denial and confess at last. Exposed, Brutus attempts to defend himself, attributing Jack's accusations to trauma and cautioning him instead. But Jack's fiery temper snaps already, and he can't suffer delay. Before the spy can finish, Jack hurls the watch and calls him a talkative traitor, cutting him off. Stunned, Brutus falters while the protagonist remains unfazed, unsure just how their meeting will unfold. Bernardo seeks answers from his leader, but before they come, Jack lands a sharp blow to his chest. The boy soon laments his attack, but it's too late. He presses on, demanding the MC's reasoning. Moving nimbly, the boy slips past retaliation, astonishing the mentor with his rare talents. Right then, Jack notices the 6th Circle mana barrier enveloping the man's form. Still, he understands that even the mighty can fail, and with 2 harsh hits sends his foe reeling. The outburst shocks the aged headmaster while the boy stays cool, determined to force a confession. The instructor, lying battered and bruised, embodies the harsh result of the just-ended beating. The boy demands a confession, making his conditions clear. Salvation is won only through truth. Brutus maintains his pretense, feigning ignorance, prompting Jack's chillingly wry grin. Jack tests the man's chest, sensing his limits, having learned that shattering lovingly wrought mana has deep effects. Keeping a hand pressed to the spy's chest, Jack warns his questions will be answered honestly or circles will shatter. Tension twists the man's features, but he strives to appear composed while risking everything. The first question, would he admit being a Tulken spy? At this, the mentor trembles but denies all. Jack breaks the first mana circle for lying, instantly reducing his powers to 5 available ones. Jack repeats his question, confident the truth can't hide forever, showing no sign of hurry. Frightened, the spy falters, paralyzed by dread like a man awaiting judgment. Jack, in a calm yet almost callous tone, warns that circle regeneration causes pain more severe than death. He continues by assuring he can prevent circles from healing, making the loss total for the victim. There's even a dreadful method to keep the break hurting forever, an idea Jack relishes inwardly. Jack watches coldly as the spy recoils in terror, victory within reach thanks to the dragon's essence flowing in him. Brutus asks how Jack came by such knowledge, growing tenser knowing the experiments were not secret to him. It seems human testing has started already. Brutus, shaken, demands to know who leaked such secrets. Jack coolly reveals his knowledge of dragons and the experiments, taunting the man's 6th Circle mission. Mentor panics and yells, bewildered that his empire's top research could ever be discovered. His outburst brings a rare ironic smirk to the boy as he begins destroying all the mana circles at once. He ridicules Brutus, who, shattered in spirit, lies defeated, unable to lift a finger in protest. Jack, weary, shifts his focus to the headmaster, signaling readiness to hear what is wanted next. But the elder lingers in silence, lost in somber contemplation as thoughts churn extremely slowly. Even in loss, Brutus mutters the Empire's fury awaits him, his body soon to be torn as punishment. Before more can be said, Jack's hand silences the instructor with a stinging slap, ending all protest. Facing defeat, the headmaster admits the complications ahead, but reluctantly confesses Jack's air of intrigue. No doubt this youth was not the timid boy Ramel once met a month ago. He is truly transformed. Jack asks the old man to forget it all, but the headmaster, though satisfied, insists on learning one final truth. He wonders how Jack unraveled everything, hoping to ask about dragon blood, but Jack abruptly stops him, invoking their pact. By now, the continent's tensions were clear. War loomed as moderates allied with radicals led by royalty battled for control. Ultimately, radical forces prevailed, the empire swept under their rule and drawn ever further into fervor. Jack, secluded for years, missed some details but possessed knowledge enough due to his master's teachings. He declares Brutus will live, delivered to the headmaster, since knowing of dragons is too valuable to waste. This information could help all, even royalty, making Ramel hesitate to criticize a boy unafraid to think about the crown. The headmaster wonders aloud, how could a man so weak on the floor possess such forbidden understanding? Jack says that during a past life, he saw hybrid dragon research progress well beyond animal trials. Soon, people would become the next test subjects, a more dire phase about to start. The truth, drawn from covert reports, lay hidden so deep nearly no one in the Empire had access. Jack explains the burden now lies on the headmaster's shoulders. This secret will be his responsibility. Having been offended by Ramel's manners, Jack asks only two things in recompense. First, Jack wants a small home with a garden, knowing the old master could afford such comfort. Though all students must stay in the dorms, Jack reminds Ramel that rules always allow exceptions. Ramel, exhausted, asks for the next condition, Charlotte's acceptance as a late student despite the term. Admittance was for the start of the year, but Jack insists exceptions to rules can always be found. Ramel asks if Charlotte, the pale girl outside squeezing Valentine like a toy, is the one Jack means and receives confirmation. Curious, Ramel inquires about their bond and Jack calls himself her guardian, making the old man laugh. The boy steps out to find Charlotte awaiting him, and her delight at seeing him is clear. He asks if she waited long, but she ignores that, focused on whether she can attend the academy. Grinning, Jack assures her she can, and the news brings an evident warmth to her spirit. Although happiness flickers on her face, she soon looks troubled as if something dark is on her mind. Akira sees this and asks what's wrong. She admits she never imagined this would be possible. She explains she was told the academy was for special humans, though she knew she wasn't human. However, the boy claims it is unimportant and asks if she despises her origins or dreams of humanity. The question weighs on her, filling her eyes with sadness as she mourns her own reality. Though odd, she emerged from House Royale, a noble fading line, a vampire family struggling to endure. Her lineage collapsed, her father gone in their end, her mother lost, a fate she'd long understood. Jack exhales, advising her to embrace her true self, not to diminish herself over heritage or nature. He insists Charlotte should honor who she is, and reminds her to remain loyal to her promises. He renews his vow, promising to protect her, and if she longs to reign, he will help her achieve it. Should she choose to revive her people, he assures her he would stand with her against all trials. Nothing seems out of reach, but he urges her never to scorn herself again, for which Muth thanks him. Soon, her mother's voice returns to her memory. Nothing in this world comes without a price. This notion catches the boy by surprise, and he agrees that nothing is ever truly given without cost. Yet he asks if she doubts he'd help her selflessly, and Charlotte quickly says that's not what she believes. He jokes that perhaps far off he may request a favor in return, and she hugs Valentine, smiling. She promises to support him if needed, and seeing her uplifted, he proposes a stroll until home is ready. Earlier, Ramel had promised he'd see to her academy application soon, perhaps within the same day. He also assured her of prepared rooms within hours, but insisted staff were needed to manage the mansion. Jack thanks him, understanding the staff is an excuse to watch him, but he doesn't mind. As they walk, the master commends the boy's insight. For one so young, his wise reflections on identity and self-worth were beyond what she anticipated. She had always thought him odd, but now sees her mistake, deciding it's a compliment meant. During their stroll, they catch sight of a blonde youth practicing sword skills. He is diligent and earnest, but not someone of concern for them as they pass by. Yet Valentine tugs at Jack's ear and demands they pause and observe. All three settle on the bench to watch, as Jack notes the tall swordsman must be under 18. He is truly startled when he senses the boy's magic sensitivity rippling with power unexpected. Such a thing surely could not exist in reality. He is utterly taken aback. A second circle commoner destined to rise hardly above the fourth, not matching his strong frame. Jack asks if Valentine likes him, to which she teases, wondering if he fears a new pupil. But there is no worry because it is plain that the boy will not achieve over the fourth circle. Jack merely wishes to uncover what draws Valentine's careful attention so keenly. While the master rarely overlooks hidden brilliance, she simply cannot sense anything unique in him, and as she struggles to find words, the youth continues, cutting air in solitude with his wooden blade. Charlotte steps in, noting that such fierce training must have left the boy near to collapse. She observes marks on his neck and mentions his clear wounds, but the master remains puzzled by the captivation. Focusing intently, Jack sees the boy's magical circle has been shattered and ingeniously restored, against all odds. Valentine deeply respects the boy's stubborn will, nearly speaking further but stays quiet. By then, Jack has already understood at last what had sparked Valentine's intrigue. The dark mage's roots are steeped in loss and destruction, fed by vengeance and bitterness. By solely mending his broken circle, he revealed a curious and unrivaled persistence. Each attack radiated hidden wrath. Jack approaches, asks to intrude, and the blonde says, "Need something." Yet Jack is the one to offer advice. "Ease up your right arm as you strike, shift your stance." He cautions that leaving his chest exposed spells trouble in genuine combat encounters. The remarks make the youth falter, startled that such insight could come from a stranger. Jack stays anonymous, claiming he's a bystander, but asks if that big body gets beaten a lot. His words bruise the youth's self-esteem, leaving him flushed, until Jack hands a delicious potion. When questioned, Jack merely offers a nonchalant shrug in reply. "It's nothing special. After stealing Bond, fortune smiled on me." Before departing, he finally learns the swordsman's name is Thanos and reveals himself as Jack Valent, vowing they'll cross paths again. As they leave, Valentine questions why the apprentice pretended at kindness, yet Charlotte truly believes in his virtue. At that moment, Thanos realizes who aided him. Scornful, he fixes a cold stare upon the group. He recognized now that the boy excelled, his grades far outshining anyone else's. Meanwhile, his own marks were abysmal, 0 in every class. He wondered if he misheard, since the recent Jack seemed nothing like the infamous disgrace rumored about the Marquis' son. Close to the academy, the hero is given a tour by a youth who calls himself Joe Nobody, the Elder's Messenger. That same title had belonged to a figure in the mercenary group Earth Ant or perhaps Fire Ant, he remembered. Awestruck, our hero complimented the elegant mansion, truly far beyond what he had hoped for. To anyone observing, it seemed the headmaster himself had ensured the association received such lavish accommodation. It made the protagonist question if that explained the messenger's blank stare. The boy insists he only follows commands, feelings aside. He insisted he acted strictly out of duty, but Jack pressed if he knew such indifference was impolite, leaving him uneasy and silent. Protagonist soon exposed the so-called messenger as using magic to mask his real identity. He questioned if the messenger as elder using was magic aware, noting the messenger's growing anxiety, yet shifted focus, marveling at so many powerful humans in a small area. Seizing his chance, he watched the man intently, hoping to make sure he wasn't another lurking spy. When silence grew unbearable, the boy burst in boisterous laughter and dropped all pretense. Laughing, he wondered how the protagonist uncovered him since even his flow state was sealed. He explained he'd come personally, intrigued by the youth who captured the headmaster's interest. At last he disclosed his name as Bellamy Cragg, Grandmaster of Teslin's magical tower. He had fought at the Elder's side during the Tulken War in his previous life, remaining loyal through the final moments. Eager to understand how Jack pierced his illusion, he listened as the boy explained he'd previously encountered an imposter beast. Though Bellamy reprimanded Jack for speaking so casually, the hero ignored it and moved closer, insisting respect must be mutual. He contended he'd never asked the master to conceal himself, so treated him as anyone. Bellamy consented with a grin, blaming the boy's keen eye. The master senses the boy's extraordinary nature, proposing to teach him magic and startling both Jack and Valentine with this unexpected offer. The boy declines respectfully, mentioning he has a master already, causing Bellamy to mention himself. He confesses he'd wanted Jack's sister as a pupil, but she refused, and despite insisting that 2 masters would be fine, Jack stays firm in his answer. Jack finds the master's recruitment habits unusual, but Valentine steps in and reveals she knows Bellamy's real identity. She unveils the master's status and states he was eligible for the 10th circle, though he seemingly abandoned that path. She wonders if an attack stopped his progress beyond the 9th circle, leaving the master clearly shaken. She perceives faint traces of the 10th circle within him, a sign born only of broken hearts. The doll assures him there is hope, regardless of age, for someone who came so close to that goal. She explains the tower is for those who persist, emphasizing he must earn the chance to continue onward. Bellamy, after many heavy words, inquires the woman's name who hurt him, but she gives no answer. She prefers to call it merely an old scar, ending the conversation with a quiet sadness. Jack urges everyone to remember that Charlotte still awaits and they should make their way back. Before parting, the boy tells the elder he will visit again at the opening ceremony. The boy nearly followed them to the tower, while Valentine seemed to sympathize with Bellamy's plight. She notes that one strives endlessly while the other remains oblivious to his own gifts. These remarks slightly offend Jack since she hasn't taught him anything recently. Yet Valentine knows Jack has learned all she had to give him. His use of darkness against Gonzalez proved this. Using that final spell marked his transition, and the training from his master was at last complete. It was astonishing that Bellamy arrived from the magic tower just for the sake of meeting the boy. Before leaving the mansion's gates, Bellamy pauses to give Jack a last thoughtful glance. A maid asks what was on his mind, and lost in thought, he admits to hearing from the headmaster just before. Earlier, Bellamy was near outrage in his office, bothered by the old man's willingness to fulfill every demand by Jack, though it was nothing personal. He finds it puzzling and odd that someone at the second circle level could contest a much stronger mage alone. To Bellamy, the boy seemed dangerously capable, yet Rammel tells him he's only seeing one perspective. Rammel adds that the boy is accompanied by a girl as well. Like any adolescent, he likely hoped to spend his days at the academy nearby with her. Moreover, his presence at that place might turn out to aid the kingdom's affairs as well. The elder proposes they concentrate on discovering how the protagonist learned so much, since he would remain there for a while. Bellamy admits the headmaster's words make sense yet remains unsettled, stating he's obedient yet desiring to add his thoughts. Frankly, he feared Rammel would be drawn into the political intrigue of the Manhwa family's house. But the elder felt the struggle for control of the volunteer house had ended, which left the master speechless. He added he understood the mark well, stating that although his eldest daughter had true talent, he regarded her as a mere political pawn. His second son was just another third circle student, hardly unique among those at the academy. Bellamy said Phelan was unimaginative and slow. When the headmaster asked for clarification, the man added wryly that age was catching up to him. Why would one abandon the duke's seat only to be caught in another mess, after leaving politics out of weariness? Minor requests like a private room or skipping classes could be overlooked, but gifting Jack a whole house was a major favor. People would soon learn of it, he feared, but the old man merely laughed, knowing after 30 years the true reason behind all the words. Rammel claims, even as a mere guess, that befriending the boy would be advantageous, which puzzled the man, but the headmaster simply kept smiling. He then recommended Bellamy visit the house himself when it was finished to see who Jack really was. Though hesitant, he accepted, and after speaking with the protagonist, he understood his old friend's wisdom. A faint smile escaped him, prompting the maid's question. He assured her it was real, having suddenly recalled past events. By now, within the mansion, the boy had already gained the devotion of the maid's chef and 5 guards. He gathered them together asking for attentive supervision, promising he'd make their duties simpler. Favorite and expected hearty promising he'd make their duty servings and simpler crisp vegetables at every meal. Despite knowing it wouldn't rival Ron's, he found the food acceptable and made dining sound urgent, which alarmed the guards. He intended to make the best use of his newly assembled support staff. His chef's name was recorded in the Guinness Book, though his appearance surprisingly resembled a Mongol. Recalling they were numerous, he called his 5 guards the 5 Musketeers as a playful nickname. The boy jokes, asking the elder if the men were guards or spies, whichever title suits them. All had experienced mana break. The boy told them they could benefit from learning how he restored his own circle at the academy. Surprised, one asks if the headmaster mentioned them, but the boy refuses, urging him to focus. During the lesson, Charlotte approaches him to remark how magnificent the mansion is. Now it was time for a guided tour of the great mansion with his precocious companion. The elder entrusted the mansion on August 9, and lessons were set to begin again on the 16th. By the time he realized 5 days had passed, delightful ones filled with restful ease. He purchased garments for Charlotte, savored treats on their strolls, and shared a musical. They enjoyed themselves, though he discovered he still had skill but wearing endless stamina. While jogging, the blonde halted him on one of these days, eager to join whatever he did. She wanted to do all her master did, and he joked of leaving her if she lagged behind unfairly. When they paused, she thanked him and asked if he'd meet that man again, which he affirmed. Next, while meeting Thanos, the boy found him as always, alone, fervent in training. He never seemed to tire. Jack noticed Thanos lacked talent but outworked the rest, maybe the hardest worker in school. Let it be noted, the straight-laced Jack visited daily, often drawing near to that stoic fellow. Compelled by curiosity over his wounds, Jack inquired about their daily increase. Feigning concern over the blonde's potion use, he looked sad. The hero wondered about his somber face. Thanos guessed it cost 40 gold, Jack agreed, and Thanos declared he'd repay him, that's all. This exasperated Jack, who really only wanted to know if it had been drunk. With so many wounds, Jack guessed the strong one's bones might by now be fractured. It likely hurt to wield a sword with numb limbs, yet he returned stoically to his practice. No ordinary soul could endure what Thanos did, and Jack saw him train without pause, puzzling over such persistence despite being battered, leaving him on edge. Even Valentine believed this determined hero had a surprising knack for being aggravating. He asked if she too found this endearing, but with pity she saw hiding in him both hatred and longing, all visible to one who taught him. These same strengths that drove him, said the master, were also slowly breaking the young man. Already he was declining, and these remarks left Jack sure the doll had judged the matter well. Phantom lacked skill but was still questioned about his reasons for practicing with the sword. He confessed his dream to be the greatest swordsman, astonishing both of his listeners. Before any more could be said, Jack erupted into laughter, lacking any sign of respect. Disheartened, the strong man told Jack to laugh freely if he found his dream amusing. The boy explained, "I'm not laughing at you," and kindly asked not to be misunderstood. Jack hadn't understood his own desire until now, so he asked Thanos if he wished to become his follower. Charlotte hurried over to the group, offering them water as a gesture of kindness. Shocked by their closeness, the blonde man felt insulted by the boy's suggestion, who offered to repeat it. He asked to clarify, "Did you really say little chick?" Unfortunately, Jack confirmed it, though he himself was unsure what it meant, suspecting nothing good. Jack rephrased, asking if he'd like to be a dependent instead, making the blonde man even more uncertain. Essentially, he aimed to take the youth under his wing as a loyal supporter. When told he was just a commoner, the mentor dismissed it without concern. Thanos admitted he could offer nothing valuable, not even money. Yet this was unimportant. Jack already knew of the volunteer house and saw the young man was unlike the stories, yet that was also irrelevant. He insisted Jack find someone more capable for such a role, saying he'd be little help. Jack gazed thoughtfully, amused how he concerned himself needlessly, and explained he wanted him as a supporter to reach his goal as the top swordsman. If Thanos didn't think he could help, he must have already accepted defeat. Ignoring the mentor, Thanos lamented his lack of mana talent, but Jack countered, saying everyone focused too much on shortcomings and affirmed Thanos' talent was exceptional. Many people shared the trait for mana talent. There were farmers full of mana ability who lived ordinary lives without tapping into their gift. Even Jack himself didn't realize his mana talents until he found a mentor. He understood that his own perception of the world differed greatly from others. He saw glowing veins ethereal in the air and mana cloaking bodies, but as a boy he didn't grasp what talent meant or care to pursue it. Natural drive like Thanos's was rare, so Jack told him not to put himself down. After all, his potential shone brighter than most. Speechless from Jack's words, the strong youth heard another sneer, "Now this beggar's making friends." When Jack turned, he spotted three unruly kids who shouldn't have been there just yet. Their resemblance to his second brother disgusted the MC, as Thanos advised him again to leave. "Leader of the Did Mac 3 tell you not to disturb anyone here," interrupted. The leader sneered, "Leader of the Did Mac 3 tell you not to disturb anyone here, or can't you even hear me?" He challenged how a regular boy could dare oppose him, but the stout man told the static MC to leave, saying this was entirely his affair. Jack, piecing things together, asked if the trio caused his wounds, his eyes glinting madly. The red-haired one guessed the pauper had received a Heil potion from the other boy, surprised anyone knew but the pair. Received a Heil, crossing his potion from the other boy arms. The small one asked if the potion he'd given the boy who promised to repay him was stolen by the group. He was stunned to be cheated of something he had willingly entrusted. Tempted to curse him outright, he instead gauged how much dignity remained for the boy as he faced lowlifes like them. The new name frustrated the bully's leader, but Thanos pressed Jack to leave quickly while he was unharmed. Worn thin, MC declared he would stay, as discovering the truth about the potion had become his business too. He called out the two hidden escorts, demanding that they show themselves for the confrontation. The redhead feigned ignorance. With the supposed escorts offering no help, Jack threatened to take the trio's possessions until they appeared. Teslin boasts 5 genuine marquises, not mere title holders but true aristocrats of wealth and means. One was the Eastern Herman house with its troublesome son Dietrich, soon to leave the academy behind. He'd broken nearly every law that could be named. By 13 he hurt a servant, at 14 used drugs, and at 15 lived only seeking indulgence. Stories even circulated that he trafficked such contraband himself. Yet as his family's legitimate heir, his destiny was bright. Attending the academy with noble heirs of dukes, he was shielded so he could act as he wished. Thus he set his sights on a nameless commoner, strange for being admitted against all odds. Catching him alone, Dietrich again treated him as his personal punching bag, as was his custom. Mid the beating though, the noise of glass shattering drew his attention. Finding it was a potion bottle, he questioned how such a lowly boy dared possess such an object. Fueled by his pride, he set out to pummel Thanos, who didn't retaliate even once. In present times, Jack trounced the others and Durio, toothless and loud, demanded to know the boy's identity. As Durio tried to strike with wood, our protagonist swiftly kicked and disarmed him. Charlotte, Valentine, and Thanos were all accustomed to the boy's frequent predicaments. With no assistance, he vanquished every one of his 3 rivals. Yet he grumbled, knowing his endurance training still awaited him. As he presumed the fight done, the redhead stubbornly declared himself heir of Margaret's house. Jack only wondered which escorts would show, as the boy defensively ranted about revenge and telling his family, oblivious to Jack's disbelief. However, the sight of our hero approaching caused him to fall silent. As was his custom, Jack stomped on the fallen boy, drawing out the guards. At last, the bodyguards emerged and demanded an end to the scene. Angered, they were told by Jack that this drama was due to their late entrance. The men asked if he grasped the gravity of what just happened, but the boy didn't bother with details. Turning to Thanos, he asked for the redhead's name. The boy scorned Thanos for a commoner's mouth, defiant to the last. That insult won a direct kick, while Jack wanted to know why Thanos had stood the entire beating without reply. A furious guard attempted to strike Jack, who danced aside as usual, escaping any harm. But something unexpected threw his focus. Second man began reciting an incantation, one belonging to advanced 6-circle spells. It was magic for a massive explosion. If this spell succeeded, the area, Thanos, the noble boy, and his master might all perish, but Fire Boy bravely called them criminals while shaping his blue mana. Now skillful, the boy gathered his magic into his palm, and any explosion was turned back by his own power. Jack smiled, his blow flawlessly delivered. Everything had played out perfectly, yet even tearful and defeated, the foe rose for another try. That was when the MC picked up on a subtle clue. The foe moved just as he had before, ready to dodge right-hand attacks by ducking them all. The foe's actions were utterly foreseeable. Our hero darts beneath him, landing a sharp punch to his chest. Jack's swift blow leaves the servant wounded, but he still pulls his sword and arcs it above. Jack withdraws, lifts a knee, and sends the weapon flying. A slow wit couldn't catch on. While holding his wounded hand, the smaller one already moves in and slips behind him. Grip encircles his hooded head, hard and suffocating, and seals all breath from his lungs. His body fades fast, leaving Jack stupefied, for the servant's mana stays sealed and hope of regaining it dim. Spells like that, Jack thinks, would let a servant cause great turmoil in the academy halls. Voice nearly gone, the defeated servant barely asks how Jack stripped him of his magic. Jack tells him he doesn't need that knowledge. All that's left is to surrender to a boy of just 14, while Jack leans close, prompting him for reasons behind their ridicule of Thanos. To them, that commoner meant little more than an object whose complaints held no weight. Jack wants restitution to begin simply. He asks for the elixir's cost back, sure the whole incident might feel like a jest if only the cloaked men were wiser. Grinding his teeth in fury, the servant spits out that the elixir should not matter now that Jack opposes the Herman family. Yet Jack cares nothing for the family. He wants repayment for what he owns, asking with a gentle smile if the servant agrees. Since the stolen elixir was worth 40 gold coins 5 days ago, its fair return is demanded. Jack then suggests a bargain. He proposes 5,000 gold coins, holding out his hands, knowing men like them lack such means. They'd better hope they have something. As Jack sat beside Dietrich, fear struck him until reassured by the boy to calm down. The single rule he sets is to hand over everything owned, and humiliation makes Dietrich grind his teeth. Jack gains 2,000 in currency and 60 gold coins from him, suddenly a wealthy man. Jack gives a laugh and sighs, how sad for you, Dietrich, things would end worse if you were poor. Now is the moment to question his identity, since Dietrich never saw him around the academy before. Jack, entertained by such a question, pats Dietrich's head and introducing himself simply as Jack, remains pleased. Everyone reacts excitedly, already aware of his name as if Jack were of renowned status. Jeff Valent, he shares, meeting someone's query about being Phelan's brother head-on. At last his older brother's foolish friends are exposed. While our boy avoids hurting children, this one is a rare exception. One swift motion plants his boot in Dietrich's mouth, and tears gather on the boy's cheeks. All you possess is your family name. Spitting, Jack vows that without his surname he's lost. The redhead claimed another's prestige but acts like a coward, threatening he would have flung them in the lake if they were older. With hard eyes, Jack demands they remember his warning and mentions that his home is beyond the campus. He warns, if you seek retribution, you'll find me there. Firmly, he says next time he won't stop as he pulls his foot from Dietrich's mouth and notices a stain of fear. Calling the girl to come along, Jack asks her to join him and she eagerly agrees to accompany him. As he passes Thanos, he squeezes his hand gently and says, the invitation still stands. He mentions his home's wonderful cook. You can always have meat, he jokes, as birds circle above the academy's courtyard. Jack decides to head out and watch the fireworks show in the province of Asinal. Held right before classes start, the festival remains a fitting way to greet new students after a challenging day. Here, the Empire's elite, emperors, nobles, and royalty join the academy where graduating ensures a future, but that privilege soon fades. Idly reflecting, Jack likens himself to a cut of meat as he ponders the last several years. Since the Teslan Empire was wiped out, Jack silently wishes for a hastened fate for all. Savoring her dessert, Charlotte is joined by Jack's mentor who gently draws him away from somber memories. She inquires if he uttered something, yet he hastily denies any such such words and feels lost in confusion. Critically, the mentor speaks about recent attacks, questioning how well the academy is guarded. Though the special law's first article claims student equality, she notes how beliefs are warped over time. With a hint of regret, the mentor confesses she concealed a crucial secret: dragon's blood and bone. She speaks of the fallen empire, awakening Jack's urge to share his past, yet he decides to keep silent. Under a dazzling sky of fireworks, Charlotte snaps him from his thoughts with a probing question about his skills. He reveals years of hard-earned skill, causing her to ask if he ever took many lives. Jack answers calmly, admitting that he hails from the future, 20 years ago to be precise. He reveals Ron was the first to know this, and his death later was certainly no coincidence. This boy shares more truths. Unlike before, he just met Charlotte today and recalls meeting her only once before in the last vampire sanctuary. Asked what draws him to her, Jack replies that he recognizes a fellow warrior in the girl. He senses her troubles and a longing in her spirit for something fundamentally new. Their next day training begins with excitement as his words ignite anticipation in the girl's heart. His plan is to shape her spirit and measure her discipline, which leaves her both shocked and curious. Bathed in sparks from fireworks, Charlotte glows in gratitude as Jack's quiet smile reflects contentment. Although great trials are coming, he chooses to set those worries aside for the present. At the same moment, Dietrich, seething with anger, demolishes everything in his own chamber. With loathing and trembling, the noble constantly recalls the protagonist's unsettling eyes and name. In the ruins of his rage, he shouts in disbelief that a boy of 14 could frighten him so deeply. Swearing revenge with shaky breaths and lost composure, he shows the extent of his distress. On his semester's second day, longing for Ron's delicious steaks, the hero seeks out his dear friend. Suddenly gripped by odd tremors and dizziness, he realizes Charlotte's red sauce is human juice. Despite his pale discomfort, the boy politely checks to see if Charlotte is enjoying the dish. She happily replies, but his gaze drifts to Thanos, forlorn and alone at the entranceway. Aware of the hero, Thanos briefly lifts his head, then softly murmurs his plea for assistance. Moved, the hero immediately welcomes him inside, offering food that makes Thanos dissolve in tears. To ease his embarrassment, the quick-witted boy credits the cook's onions for Thanos' teary state. The next day, Thanos awkwardly apologizes, but the kindly hero assures him all is forgiven. The protagonist pointedly avoids prying, respecting Thanos' privacy and suspecting an elixir's role. Watching the brawny mentor train hard, the young master is soon interrupted by Charlotte's arrival. Well-dressed and focused, the resolved girl makes clear her readiness for today's important teachings. With a satisfied smile, the seasoned guide prepares to lead another lesson with his eager pupil. By late day, Charlotte, thoroughly drained, collapses on the earth, emptied of all energy. Jack spoke warmly, "You were outstanding today, truly excellent in everything you did." Yet the girl's faint sigh reveals her exhaustion has surpassed her limits for now. With excitement, she asks what it means to use mana, and the boy grins. "Congratulations, Charlotte." He'd sensed it before, but now he was certain of her remarkable talents. She wielded mana so naturally, it was as though she was already an adept. Forming her first mana circle in just 10 hours was extraordinary for such a novice. After only a few light steps and she agreeing to end the collapses on a bench lesson, she moves to rise and head for the mansion. After only a few light, instantly falling asleep. The mentor wonders if the boy will tell Charlotte that circles usually take days to master for beginners. If deciding alone, he'd have begged her to become his pupil, though solo it'd have taken her a whole day. A magical circle grows at her feet, channeling mana into shields and reservoirs of strength. He shared his vitality to aid Charlotte, quickening magic's flow, a gift not all can use. The boy admits mana was a challenge early on for him too, making her feat more amazing. What surprises the mentor is Jack giving selflessly, content just to aid her without asking for repayment. Spotting Thanos, the boy comments on his tears in surprise, prompting a hasty wipe of his face. The mentor notes his uneasy air, quickly reading disappointment and feelings of restraint. Thanos, sunk in gloom, grieves in silence while envying the girl, hoping she's not good at swordplay. Jack inquires if he believed it would be simple to become the West's greatest knight, causing Thanos to collapse in tears. The boy sighs as he watches the strong man crumble, amazed how a giant can weep so easily. Jack encourages him, saying, "A true knight would never surrender to doubt, even over a girl." He gently reassures Thanos, stroking his hair as he urges persistence to fulfill his ambition. For the first time, someone truly believes in him, stirring feelings never before awakened within the knight. His dream of greatness was long mocked and never believed, a gentle naivety undeterred by ridicule. Jack recognizes the pain, having faced it in his own home, and quietly asks about the trouble. Grasping Jack's hands, the boy softly thanks him for believing, a gesture that moves him deeply. Without a word, Jack advises persistence, for skills always stay, but a snap from behind draws his attention as he ponders how to aid the knight. The large man's instincts tell him the boy senses danger. He wonders who could approach now. Jack grows uneasy, feeling watched and vulnerable, as if he's become the center of attention. It seems trouble arrives at the worst time. Thanos observes Jack's tense, battle-ready look ahead. The boy urges Thanos to guard the girl and remain behind him. Though hesitant at first, the blonde man agrees promptly and stands up. The boy already knows who's coming and remarks he expected the visitor's death, yet not their speedy arrival. His keen gaze searches until he locates the watcher. Nearby, 5 men who had trailed them lie unconscious. Though still as stone, the men remain alive as Charlotte sleeps peacefully, nestled in Thanos' arms. The white-haired man tells of bringing the girl just as her mentor arrives, rubbing her eyes and yawning in exhaustion. The unaware girl asks if they will dine right before Dietrich and hooded figures appear circling them, with some hiding on the ground and others among the tree's highest branches. Every face is menacing while Dietrich grins unsettlingly. He greets Jack Valent using his full name with a clear challenge. Jack harnesses Mana, ready to defend, and firmly warns Dietrich not to approach again. Dietrich, heir to the great Eastern Marquis, understands only might truly rules, soon destined to wield his family's power. He ponders the logic of sparing Jack, as trouble could arise with the Duke of Asenal. Yet a scheme forms in his mind. Dietrich asserts Jack initiated the attack and has witnesses, risking a feud between Herman and Valent. Next to him stands Benjamin, masked and renowned master of Pentelguild, wielding Ninth Circle powers. Jack, gifted as he is, stands no chance against Ninth Circle mastery, and while Dietrich explains the true quarry is Jack himself, now near the mansion with his friends. Dietrich asks if Benjamin needs anything more, and as he notes the blonde forming a Mana heart, relief comes knowing 2 days remain, grateful for their 9-hour stay. His unit includes a cook and 5 servants whose positions have been marked. They will be dealt with at the order. They avoid confrontations with Assemble's busy household. Nearby, cries call for water. The Duke's basement has caught fire just before the group arrived. With everyone fighting the blaze, help is out of reach as the masked master quietly updates his team. Everything fell into place for them, and as Jack gave the order to attack, their plan began. With a wave, a crowd of fighters charged in, yelling, "Avance!" launching a 500,000 gold order. Dietrich is certain Jack Baylor is finished, until Thanos broad-backed shields the smaller Jack. The blonde tells the master to escape as he nervously grips his heavy blade, promising to hold them off. He thanks Jack for his trust, takes responsibility, and swears to keep the enemy busy for their escape. Jack, surprised by their willingness to protect him, smiles at how charmingly naive they are. He wonders if anywhere else he could find such people, warmed by the contrast to his lonely past death. Squaring his shoulders, he steps up, telling everyone to stay behind as he vows to defend them all. Moving with poise, Jack nears Dietrich, convinced nothing will stop those who are prepared to die. About to unleash Mana on all, the boy is stopped by his mentor who pinches his cheek and asks him to stop. She lands before Dietrich, puzzling Jack with the thought she might personally defeat their enemy. The proud noble is baffled as the doll moves and speaks, her eyes glowing like lanterns. Her hair floats and motes of light dance onto Dietrich, who winces and complains he cannot see. An adult heroine now appears amid swirling smoke before him, legend Reawakening in form. She who once raised civilization returns after 400 years, leaving Dietrich utterly confused. The hero looks pleased and greets his mentors, but her punch drops him painfully to the frozen ground. Rubbing his jaw, the boy wonders aloud why he was hit, unsure of what warranted her anger. She says it's his punishment for dismissing her feelings and carrying her from the cavern without care. He hadn't thought about her wishes back then, yet sits content, scolded but relieved simply to see her again. Agreeing to the rebuke, the boy demands Dietrich's coat. Shamed, the noble grudgingly tosses it to him. Gently placing the coat around his mentor with care, he shows his concern but stands by his bold decision. When asked again if he has regrets, he repeats that he did what was needed and it all worked out. "Did you want to peacefully die there?" the mentor asks, and he answers, "I know you too well for that," arguing that like beasts, people follow their wishes and she longed for a greater world. He asserts there is little contrast between races, and he sensed her hidden wish to leave the cave that day. His guardian, once trusted wrongly, fell prey to her own creation and paid by being ensnared in it. Dietrich and his men show fear, while the mentor quietly feels responsible for her student. At first, the young man barely understands, believing she thought of him as nothing but a nuisance. Pleased by her words, he accepts her hidden praise, watching a dark smoke spiral in her palm. The woman draws deep magic, apologizing as she acts since they tried to harm her student. Panicked, Dietrich rushes his men to attack, blind to the enormous threat looming before them. The mentor utters ancient words as black resin drips, painting the sky and warping what's real. Through purple haze that forms above the mentor, the main character struggles to spot the foes. She chants on, declaring the resin's return as a sinister skull takes form behind her presence. Far away in the Tulken Empire, the master senses trouble, recalling a very old, troubling feeling. For a brief while, he considers whether all he felt might have just been an elaborate illusion. Clearly, something disrupts the natural flow of mana around where he now stands. Meanwhile, cloaked figures in the Black Sea engage in heated debates, fully sure of their beliefs. Both past and present spirit traces match only one person, Valentine Milo's proven by magic. The dragon still bears the scar left by that woman, who lingers painfully in a cloaked man's memories. Her strange longevity of 410 years leaves them dumbfounded, rulers struggling to comprehend her. The protagonist's amber eyes mirror the spell as the tar becomes a skull opening hungry jaws. The skull's cry freezes Dietrich's group, showing only the blackened mage with blazing eyes. A fierce wave banishes all who opposed, leaving the noble ensnared by devastating fear and confusion. He notices odd sensations in his legs. Nearby, mercenaries convulse and watch themselves turn to dust. Dietrich understands his doom as his legs vanish. His fate is now impossible to escape or avoid. His shaking fingers crumble as a bony hand nears, which sends him scrambling frantically backward. He begs for mercy with promises of riches, but she scorns his desperation and refuses to listen. Dietrich's body vanishes altogether, tiny glowing motes escaping upward through a bright sky portal. As Charlotte is stunned silent, the girl sees Valentine as a final boss, only to be gently patted. The mage introduces herself as the foolish boy's mentor and asks kindly that they care for him. When Thanos stuns the group, the blonde gently stops him and offers a correction. The cunning stops him and offers a correction, bringing a smile from the mentor, who admits she had misjudged him. The boy shows his playful arrogance, and the master laughs, pushing him for acting childish. Before they leave, Jack tells Charlotte about the juice in the kitchen and asks Thanos to help the fallen. Hearing the little vampire complain of aching legs and wanting to be carried, the blonde sighs, finally agreeing. The hero, bidding farewell with a smile about his loyal friends, questions his mentor on a pressing issue. With gravity, Valentine Milo tells the hero she has pondered his words seriously since before. She wonders if he already forgot what was said to the man while she listened from Charlotte's arms. The mentor learned all about dragon blood and bones, suspecting sinister research on immortality. Clearly troubled, she voices her fear that these grotesque experiments are an evolution of past taboos. He affirms her suspicions are correct and praises her clear, logical thinking about the truth. He shares how mankind's longing for endless life includes clinging to youth and vitality as well. Meanwhile, during ancient immortal research, elderly scholars suggested a daring new strategy. Why merely wish to live forever when races like vampires and dragons actually age at unique rates? He describes disorderly labs, papers stained with blood where hybrid tests sometimes barely succeeded. This mismatched blending offered powers from elves and orcs but brought immense suffering instead. These test subjects gained just a few extra years and died horribly, the boy adds. Now, the Tulken Empire has prolonged those hybrids' lives to a mere 30 years. The mentor struggles with guilt, as she thought she'd wiped out those involved centuries earlier. She recalls stepping barefoot into the lab, documents on the cold floor crowning a grim memory. She remembers reducing documents to ashes and ending all tormented creatures crawling at her feet. Overcoming emotion, she confesses she made an unforgivable error that haunts her now. She acknowledges she should have destroyed the dragon lords as well. She reveals 2 dragons turned against their kin, likely letting their heirs be experiment fodder. The protagonist quickly identifies them. Out of all, only 2 dragon lords can wield soul energy, which also marks their unusual hair. Mixing their power with 10 circle mages birthed creatures that shattered magical wards entirely. The mentor, after digesting this news, posed a vital question about her pupil's aspirations. Though a being of old times, she remains tied to the world, ever eager for where it might go. The boy shares his goals, to ascend circles by year's end and attack Tulken Empire in holidays. He intends to mimic her, destroy labs and those involved, while poor Thanos shoulders unconscious servants. Rolling up her sleeve and musing, the mentor wonders if they truly must wait for school break. His surprise at her query reveals his hesitation, confirming to Valentine his deep loyalty as a disciple. With a sharp glare, the boy reminds her she vowed not to meddle, making this battle his fate. She now doubts her old resolve, convinced that the labs must be destroyed, even by her own hand. So she plans swift departure for Tulken, determined to act, wielding unmatched mentor authority. Destroying that lab would ignite chaos among radicals desperate to fuse races across the continent. The hero senses she has moved past her former sorrows at last. While his burden still lingers, so he unexpectedly requests she open a dimensional rift for a certain blade. At once, with a sweep, she conjures a violet portal from which a stunning blade is drawn. The carrion sword made by a dwarven king and mermaids feels fitting and dear in his grip. Valentine produces a white mask, detailed and enchanting, able to hide faces and wield manifold tricks. Questioned on how she found it, she hesitantly claims she once bought it at an ancient market. After donning it, the boy jokes about using it to spy in bathhouses, earning a scolding tap for his cheek. When handed teleportation codes, his recognition is instantly kindled in his brightening eyes. These lead to the Gunnar Empire's old capital, her centuries-old home, where the hidden labs now lurk below ruins. She parts the portal and holds out her hand, checking his readiness, laughter erupts in answer. The story shifts to a far-off lab as a scientist brags of praise from Hank Beckerman himself. Questioned about human trials, the scientist defends himself, saying animal test results appear encouraging. He tries explaining cell activation, but Hanks interrupts sternly, demanding to know the true start date. Wringing his hands, the scientist asserts that he urgently needs magical subjects to continue the tests. Asked to name these hybrids, he responds promptly, showing he already holds their title in mind. The word half-bloods paints a subtle grin of delight on Hank's face. Before departing, the hero pauses to ask the doctor about any forthcoming visits at the site. The scientist denies any meetings, while Hank senses a strange mana before the ground quakes fiercely. Suddenly, the floor shatters as Hankas reacts swiftly, debris raging through the chamber. The noble recites spells for safety, but the doctor's desperate shouts pierce the chaos. Yet nothing can break the sheer might of the force wrecking his defenses. Blood mists from his mouth as he tries to grasp reality, while Hank's servant wonders if danger has melted away. But fresh flames burst forth, a moment too late, trapping the doctor utterly defenseless within their reach. Hank summons a fading shield but is thrown backward, his entire body trembling. Though his barrier remains, the shock leaves him coughing violently, holding his aching chest. As he looks around, he notices the silent, lifeless form of the experiment's doctor burning below. Mackenberg, surrounded by fatal wounds, falls as crimson streaks stain the ancient stones. Horrified, the hero gestures towards the chamber, its fluids flow endlessly, stirring anger within him. Upon inquiring about intentions, he grins, then asks for the reins of the unfolding chaos. Nodding with approval, the mentor lets Valentine summon infernal fire as the boy hides from its heat, noting its splendor. The group stands on the third floor in the shadowed ruins of a long-lost culture. While the mentor checks for remains, the hero nears the chained dragon, nodding carefully as it warns him with a guttural sound. He remembers wintry times when the beast was weaker, drenched in misery, seeking only peace. Smiling still, he unsheathes the Salarian blade and advances, undeterred by the creature's menacing cries. With swift, fluid strokes, he gracefully reduces the metal chains to shards pooling at his feet. Spent, the dragon sags onto the stone as the protagonist gently pets its heavy head with sympathy. 18 long years have slipped away since that meaningful first encounter. The protagonist bows anew and softly wraps his arms around the creature's rough, scaled throat. He gently murmurs reassurance to the dragon, recognizing the deep suffering and bone-weary fatigue. Jack watches the now smiling dragon, recalling when it pleaded so desperately to be allowed release. A heavy silence lingers as the boy wonders aloud if the dragon wishes to remain a subject. Left behind by its kin, it endures pain, its aching limbs skewered with sharp stakes. The lonely dragon stands devalued, treated as mere special livestock. Hearing how it scales armored men and its blood-fueled cruel science, the dragon weeps. Jack speaks of endless torment, madness spiraling until every faint hope of survival is gone. He suggests freedom in a faraway land, somewhere the nameless dragon could shape its fate. At first, just a quiet murmur escapes, then hope ignites and the dragon's roar marks its choice to live. The youth compares this moment to when he'd mercifully ended a past dragon's suffering. As Jack offers a new home, he addresses his mentor, who quietly approves his decision. Their moving scene halts with Hanks's enraged outcry, making the dragon quake when it sees its tormentor. Undisturbed by angry insults, the teen and dragon carry on their talk, further provoking the noble. When Hanks forms magic and steps forward with tension, Jack's calm smile intensifies his rage. A chilling gaze sharpens Jack's face, emitting dark energy that makes the adult quickly step back. A swift knee shatters the noble's blade, and shock spreads at the realization of shadowy power. While the student presses on, the mentor silently observes, letting the struggles unfold alone. Fury surfaces as Jack smashes the weapon's shards and then hurls the noble aside, with the inspired dragon watching quietly. Hank's form smashes a heavy dent into the wall before sliding across the ground, unconscious. Jack steps forward with obvious letdown, unsure how the usually strongest man could fall so simply. Trying desperately to rise, Hank clutches his ruined sword and in fear asks the boy who he really is. With an unsettling chuckle, Jack makes the noble tremble, the scornful laugh sharper than threats themselves. Jack, with prophetic voice, reveals he knows Thanos, a future knight destined to defeat the blonde. Outraged by this vision, the noble attacks barehanded, as Jack coolly readies his sword in challenge. Ember eyes, dripping with cunning, flicker between the dragon and noble, studying every motion. As Hankas moves for a fresh weapon, Jack reacts with speed and precision. Jack's exact swipe cuts the noble's hand off, sending it arcing through the room. Juice splatters as the boy's chilling stare belittles Hanky's, inviting both scorn and sympathy. Jack lands measured kicks until the fallen noble collapses lifelessly upon cold, hard stone. As he wipes his bloodied blade, Jack suggests Hanky should grow stronger. He says it will only become truly engaging once Hanky's meets his end. Jack divulges secrets about Tulken's prince, foreseeing Hank's violent fate when seeing his fearful student. Memories of a former life return, Hank was once slain by him, then Morangos avenged and lost his own head. With grim delight, Jack wields the old dragon chains to sever the disciple's arm. The mentor seeks confirmation, but with a faint mention of something still viable left behind. By teleporting to the courtyard, Jack lowers his mask indifferently, suppressing a laugh. His look wavers from faint amusement to indifference, betraying deep familiarity with brutality. He addresses the dragon, inquiring its name, prompting its wary, shaking reply from the ground. The words Shell Bahamid emerge with tremulous restraint from the dragon's lips. Tenderly touching dragon scales, the boy ponders the parent's motives for such a surname after much anguish. Jack baldly asserts, "You're Shell now," his guarded, caring look fixed firmly upon the dragon. Shell the dragon accepts care for wounds in a quiet room, dozing on pillows until full exhaustion. Valentine Milos, seated cross-legged, queries her apprentice about his intentions for the dragon lords. He conveys hesitation over who should yield first, humorously wishing the strong sought out the meek. A knowing gleam reveals itself in his eyes, one familiar to his mentor as gentle devotion. Jack unabashedly reveres the woman who lived centuries past others, creating the world's foundations. He kneels, pledges to confront the dragon ruler soon, wishing to spare her more hardship. After a pause, Valentine concedes, leaving for a bath as Jack gazes at her old cloak. Noticing her return hair damp, the boy flatters her, earning advice that he too should bathe. Undoing his shirt, he shows his scar-littered child's body, self-treating wounds with elixir dependency. Asked about his night plans, he sits close yet answers vaguely, only to spot her worries. Slipping into feigned frailty, he plays up aches and recalls Ron telling him she once cared for him 3 days. Now the roles reverse as he tenderly tucks in his sleeping mentor, cherishing her tranquil beauty. He quietly imagines meeting her centuries ago, wondering what she'd be like in her origin days. Such thoughts make him flush as he kneels near the woman despised by most as a fearsome necromancer. Yet to him, she's more beautiful than any sight in the world. Earlier, down in the duchy's dungeon, a chained man wonders if spying for 10 years was truly wrong. The leader's kindness deepened the betrayal in the Tower Lord's eyes, heavy with unspoken reproach. Despite restraints, the captive smirks and asks the Tower Lord if he's in denial or feigning ignorance. Brutus challenges him to ponder past years and why skilled mages keep leaving the kingdom. The air grows grave as he reveals the real reasons mages are sent to clear the supposedly cursed forests. When threatened with torture, the prisoner answers only with crazed laughter, unfazed by threats. His untouched condition after days confined makes one ask if he's truly seen as a traitor. Sending troubled by doubt, the Tower Lord questions if their own kingdom harbors internal ruin. Exactly 4 hours later, just as Dietrich's attack begins, an unexplained blaze erupts in the dungeon. When the Tower Lord enters, finding only cinders, he presumes Brutus has perished in the flames. By morning, Thamos news of the Nervauslide dragon points and Shell doubts if the stirs both beast is a awe and real dragon tension among the hero's companions. Charlotte is visibly uneasy. Thamos news of the Nervauslide dragon points and Shell doubts if the stirs both beast is a awe and real dragon. The hero then clarifies that Shell, unlike the usual monsters, deserves kinder understanding. In an effort to reassure them all, he gently calms the trembling dragon, comforting its frightened heart. Promising safety to Shell, he notes quietly to himself that accepted truths aren't always actual facts. A regular sword can't harm a dragon. They're called blessed beings due to their mystical power. It's likely Hanny's beggar performed cruel trials on Shell, exploiting the dragon for wicked means. However, the protagonist managed to punish him with a solid, well-aimed kick as retribution. Now Shell trembles nervously around the boy, clearly stunned by his strong defense against evil. Awestruck, the dragon gazes at him with a mix of fear and admiration in its shining eyes. He muses Shell now views him in a new light as if he's changed, but still finds himself quite appealing. When he lifts his hands, the boy witnesses the dragon bow low in surrender, so unlike before. In an earlier existence, Shell was defeated. Though little improved, pity wells as the boy caresses the dragon girl's snout, measuring her to be about 8 in human years. He wryly notes only tragically misunderstood creatures seem drawn to his side. The mentor then pours healing magic into the dragon, astonishing the onlookers as paws swiftly mend. Yet the transformation is far from over. Valentine's magic continues, forcing Shell's painful screams as his form shifts into a more human semblance. What appears is a frail-looking girl. Charlotte huddles close to Thanos while the mentor beams with pride. Captivated by the mentor's novel appearance, the protagonist is rattled back to reality with a reminder of the coming semester event. He assures Shell they'll return soon, encourages her to rest, and inquires about a preferred dragon meal. The mention of meat brightens her face, and so the boy instructs the cook to prepare a prime steak. Before departing, he proposes the rooftop view if she grows weary, all the while pondering her fate. Memories surface of the Academy's founding after the birth of the Kingdom of Teslan. The director addresses the students darkly, warning that even the greatest kingdoms can fall, so unlike the hopefulness once recalled. Hints of lurking dangers and inner strife seem all too prescient. especially after the lab's destruction the day prior. The old director clearly harbors secrets, perhaps gleaned from Brutus, speaking of radicals in the 10th circle violently overtaking Tulken. Unlike their passionate founders, the director's somber tone confuses students with its contradiction. While observing his classmates reflect on the speech, he realizes each holds power that could reshape a grim destiny. When the ceremony ends, students blend into the courtyard, shifting focus to their usual endeavors. Jack arches his back after sitting long, remarking there won't be any classes or gatherings this first day. Thinking gratefully of his gifted house, Jack spots a known form in the crowd, shouting his older brother's name with delight. His brother, startled by the call, watches as Jack waves gleefully, eagerly asking about his arrival. A curt "yesterday" is the answer. His brother dodges contact while Jack, undeterred, insists on at least some courtesy. Reminding him of their shared lineage, Jack's gaze grows sharper as the brother's reluctance lingers. Jack quietly tells the older one he could easily break him if he failed to offer minimum respect. Next, comfortably feigning nonchalance before others, he asserts aloud that he won't hold him up further. Jack gives a warm pat and releases Phelan, who swiftly flees as if escaping a threat. Charlotte approaches Jack, watches Phelan run, and asks if they are friends, to which he says no. Perplexed by the mention of them as blood brothers, she hears that kinship isn't always affection. The girl looks curious and with an inscrutable face presses him to define what she means to him. Jack, caught off guard by her question, jokingly wonders if she's grown up with such serious queries. His honest response, "She is truly family," brightens the vampire's face even though his is stoic. For Jack, family now means those he freely chooses to protect, like mentor Thanos and Charlotte. At the same time, Phelan hurries away from friends who start gossiping about his odd behavior. One observes that Jack seems to control the older sibling now, their brotherly customs reversed. Phelan is baffled by his own fear, feeling insecurity toward the brother he once toyed with. Troubled thoughts urge him faster while his friends grow unsure, suspecting a fragile state of mind. Angrily, Phelan whirls to face Jack but freezes instantly at his brother's dangerous confidence. His words escape him and feeling defeated, he turns away, never voicing his intended challenge. Jack notes coldly that his brother has become dull, trembling still despite conquering his water phobia. Something strange thrummed inside, a storm of hatred, dread, and a feeling new and unsettling. Lost in these emotions, he fails to notice his own pain, grasping cold cookies and recalling Brutus's death. The boy was not surprised by Brutus's fate, rather he questioned the old director about the threat. The old man was mystified at how little the boy cared about Brutus's fate, life, or death. Realizing there was no progress, Jack thanked him for the building and praised the chef's talents that won Charlotte over. The director's silence on Brutus lingered, but before Jack could leave, the older man summoned him back. Nearly dropping cookies, Jack listened in surprise as the old man offered a transfer to college by the tower's influence. Jack confessed that he never cared to take regular lessons at the academy, but the director explained coming rule changes, proposing a deal he thought Jack might like. Jack could reduce his studies with magic, but he bargained to only attend classes once a week. They finally agreed on just 2 class days, while Jack insisted he sought only the diploma. His real aim became clear: gaining access to the Academy's hidden vault of ancient enchanted arms. Even if the sword he sought was missing, Jack believed Bellamy Craig might forge a better one. Seeing both Bellamy and the director keen to enlist him, Jack couldn't help but smile. Leadership was never his way. When told that displaying talent would make him a marquis, Jack erupted with hearty, amused laughter. After regaining composure, he declined the noble rank with courtesy, for such an honor never fit his dreams. As he moves to depart, the aged director pauses Jack to question him about any trouble in the village yesterday. Thinking of fainted servants, he assures the director that everything was ordinary. Yet the director's inquiries resemble a mild interrogation. Jack explains he was simply checking on the staff as their duties were neglected. Amos brought everyone inside to keep them from lingering outside. He didn't ask the reason, only guessed it was some quarrel, a claim the elder finds unsteady. Taking his word, the director offers a fatherly remark: children inevitably get into tussles as they grow up. Jack rises to depart, but a vivid painting halts him by the doorway. It shows a maiden delivering a blow to a fearsome horned figure. Valentine remains behind, and her presence prompts reflective silence from the director. His seasoned intuition, sharpened by years of politics, notices subtleties in her air. In countless meetings with royals and nobles, never had he known an aura like Valentine Milo's. Touching the room's flowers, the master remarks that the director delivered a notable speech. She moves differently, even the way she nears the window shows delicate peculiarity. He's convinced she is truly one of a kind, unmatched among women. Valentine says the role of general might better suit him than academic head, In times past he fought vigorously like Bellamy recalled, and the Tesla Empire is filled with promising souls. Can the director safeguard all that brilliance? Her majestic eyes hold his, questioning if he has truly pondered her words. While he seeks a reply, someone interrupts his thoughts. The door flies open, Jack returns determined to fetch his mentor once more. She voices her complaint, pointing out she'd been leaving even without the oath. The boy defends himself, saying her delay worried him deeply. As Valentine moves through the streets, every passerby's gaze is drawn toward her. Vendors tempt her with bread and tea, but she turns them away, claiming curious allergies and says, "Today, I can't tolerate flour at all. I've had all the tea I can stomach," she says, not perturbed by the merchants' disappointed faces. The thought that maybe the director wished to take her on as his pupil is written plainly on his features. Valentine turns suddenly and asks an unusual question, catching everyone off guard. "Do you trust Director Rammel?" Her inquiry seems to demand an obvious answer now. Jack declares trust belongs only to those he calls family, none else. Valentine should take heed. Their bond with the old director is purely out of shared need. The mentor is fully aware he would never let himself be a piece in someone's scheme. Here, money though she still seems doesn't to be the main grasp, the real focus reason. Their destination is the Alades Guild. Such a setting seems oddly chosen, since Jack's money seems to be the main focus. Alades is a haven for mercenaries and hunters, where cash can buy nearly any favor. Jack knows a mage from the Brotherhood costs as much as Dietrich likely once paid. But what follows when both client and agent meet their end together? That's their cause for visiting. A polite receptionist greets the mentor, yet Jack steers the conversation. He instructs to see the head, demanding full refund, his coded words veiling deeper purpose. "Last night, Ninth Circle assassins," he says. The girl's face pales and she gives a startled cry. A nearby co-worker covers her mouth as she nearly utters Jack's name, his smile sharp in reply. He leans in, menacing, questioning her so she won't recognize him, gaze filled with warning. She blurts out Dietrich, her companion hurrying to calm her, but the scheme is in motion. Jack realizes Dietrich chose poorly, using the guild as a go-between rather than facing him. Circumstances flip tense, staff fearful won't answer, so Jack flips a coin, giving 5 minutes to bring the boss. If the clock reaches 0, Jack will wipe Ella's guild away without regard for renown or power. Valentine is baffled by her pupil's resolve to destroy a longtime and revered establishment. Jack reveals that Imperial guilds mostly serve as conduits, lacking any true autonomy. He seeks to discover Dietrich's hired hand, but the attendant's shocked look gave much away. She obviously identified Jack and was startled he's alive, which tells him she knew about the plot. Hiring a guild for noble murder is about as discreet as painting the crime upon the city gates. Jack assumed Dietrich would act on his own for this very reason. Everybody in the guild stares as though Jack were a ghost, even those who set the job for Dietrich. The office door swings open to reveal the manager munching grapes until he hears of the guest. His features tighten instantly upon hearing Jack Valent, doubt and dread filling his eyes. "How is he living?" The attendant clasps her skirt, trembling, repeating Jack's latest grim warning. Never in all his 34 years has the leader faced this. Pentinel's masked assassins always deliver. They never accept defeat. Their chief is a Ninth Circle magician, but this mark lives on. There's no time to ponder plans. When the final grains slip through the Sangelas, the leader steps out, anxiety in his manner. He calls himself Vero, chief of Alades Guild, offering a shaky apology as fear clings to his voice. Jack and Vero sit, Jack refusing their drink and steering the meeting swiftly to business. Al feigns polite curiosity as to Jack's motives, asking if he has a task for their guild's talents. Jack, arms crossed, clarifies their talk is only just beginning, a shadow flickering in his gaze. He easily sees greed light up Vero's eyes as he imagines the significant rewards of this encounter. Yet hope deserts Vero the instant Jack matter-of-factly brings up the knight's attempt on his life. He bluntly asks if a hit contract was placed through them, and Arrow's hesitant answer betrays him, as law shields the guild for such deals. Jack grasps the nature of the trade. Mercenaries yearn for gold, clients for action, guilds for profit. The Areds Guild is one of the greatest in Tesla Empire, rumored linked to the Imperial dynasty itself. Jack then asks directly what price did his life fetch. Dieter's people waver, unsure, making Jack scowl. He didn't come for avoidance, he demands clear figures. The leader starts to sweat as that furious gaze bears down on him. Jack dislikes repeating himself and his patience is running thin from evasion. Valentine observes with a frown while Ao steers talk toward contracts and fees. The boy interrupts forcefully. He isn't here to bargain but to settle an old debt. Although those responsible are gone, Jack wants every coin of the contract money repaid. He gives a deadline. Aviro has just 1 week to return Dietrich's full payment. If even a single gold is missing, the entire guild will face ruin. As he leaves, Jack warns them not to deduct anything as administrative expenses. Jack will spot any inconsistency, Ao says nothing but his expression betrays realization. There is absolutely no tolerance for mistakes now. As they descend the stairs, Jack remarks to his mentor that progress has been made. He intends to launch his own investigation in parallel. Meanwhile, the team crowd in as their leader falls onto the couch in despair. Between moans, regret gnaws at him for ever accepting Dietrich's proposal. Trouble follows the feuds of nobles, his shouted regret signals meddling with those out of his league. Thus the video draws to a close. To catch the next episode, enable notifications and see you soon with Tobbs.